the second hour, a story of justice, resilience, and a 25-year fight for the truth. Fuquan McGee was released from prison last fall after serving more than 25 years for crime he maintains he never committed. He'll be here alongside his colleague Jacqueline Fonseca. Plus, we'll check in with GBH's Jared Bowen and end the show asking you, how do you best protect your food from the ravenous pilferers of co-workers and roommates? Thursday, next on Boston Public Radio.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says U.S. military strikes in Iran have been very successful. Speaking at a cabinet meeting that is still underway, Trump says Iranian officials are begging to make a ceasefire deal with his administration.
And they're great negotiators. I say they're lousy fighters, but they're great negotiators. And they are begging to work out a deal. I don't know if we'll be able to do that. I don't know if we're willing to do that. They should have done that 4 weeks ago. They should have done it 2 years ago. Or they should have done it when we first came into office.
But Iranian officials have rejected a U.S. ceasefire proposal. Pakistan says it has relayed messages between U.S. and Iranian officials. Israel's military says it has killed the head of Iran's Revolutionary Guard naval forces. A Pakistani official, following negotiations with Iran, has confirmed his death. This is Israel's latest assassination of senior Iranian leaders since it killed the supreme leader nearly a month ago. Itai Stern reports from Tel Aviv.
Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, says the military carried out a precise overnight strike, killing Ali Raza Tangsiri, Iran's top naval commander. Katz says Tangsiri was directly responsible for naval mining operations and efforts to block the Strait of Hormuz, a key global shipping route. According to the U.S. Treasury, which had previously sanctioned him, Tangsiri headed the Navy's testing of drones and cruise missiles. Katz says the killing is the latest warning to Iran that it will continue targeting senior leaders and, quote, operate with full force to achieve its war goals. For NPR News, I'm Itai Stern in Tel Aviv.
Lawmakers are meeting today to consider aviation safety reform. A runway crash in New York killed 2 pilots on Sunday, and recently the National Transportation Safety Board came out with recommendations. This follows last year's deadly mid-air collision near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. NPR's Kristen Wright reports.
House committees on transportation and armed services are considering changes to aviation with the goal of making it safer to fly. The ALERT Act requires airplanes and helicopters to be equipped with collision prevention technology. The bill also calls for enhanced air traffic control training. Lawmakers are also considering an audit of the FAA's safety culture, and the legislation proposes strengthening the airspace around Reagan Washington National Airport. 67 people were killed when an American Airlines jet and Army Black Hawk helicopter collided there last year. Reforms on the table address the NTSB's recommendations after its year-long investigation into the crash. Kristen Wright, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, the Dow has turned negative. It's now down nearly 90 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. FIFA, the global governing body of soccer, has had to cancel hotel blocks in all U.S. host cities, delivering a potential blow to hotels who had a lot riding on the 39-day World Cup tournament. The Boston Business Journal reports FIFA officials released about 2,000 of 10,000 previously booked rooms in Philadelphia, 800 of 2,000 in Mexico City, and an undisclosed number here in Boston. FIFA hasn't publicly given a reason for the pullback in room reservations, but Meet Boston tells the BBJ that the reduction in rooms is due to an overestimate of booking needs from 2 to 3 years ago. And Boston is on the cusp of being one of the first major cities in the country to ensure that all Boston Public School graduates be proficient in artificial intelligence. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, along with BPS Superintendent Mary Skipper and technology entrepreneur Paul English, announced a major public-private partnership on the matter earlier today. In sports, all eyes on the 2026 Boston Red Sox today as they play the season opener in Cincinnati. It's a 4 o'clock start. Newsflash Nancy wants to know why we sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" when we're already there. Big international friendly soccer game at Gillette Stadium today. Top-ranked Brazil and France face off at 4 o'clock, and some pretty big NCAA basketball games on tap tonight. Texas versus Purdue, Iowa versus Nebraska, Arkansas versus Arizona, and Illinois versus Houston. 54 in Boston, 54 in Springfield. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, supporting creative people and effective institutions committed to building a more just, verdant, and peaceful world. More information is at macfound.org.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow for another edition of Ask the Governor. Maura Healy's going to be with us between 11 and noon, taking our questions and yours, and another Live Music Friday with Grammy-winning bassist Oscar Stagnaro. Hi, Jim.
Hey, and we should also say in about 30 minutes, speaking of music, we're going to have 3 longtime retired players from the Boston Symphony Orchestra talking about the mess there at the moment. So armed ICE agents are roaming airports and have started checking IDs and security lines as the DHS and TSA. Across the country, some airports are experiencing greater than 40% call-out rates for workers who, as you know, are not being paid. And more than 480 transportation security officers have now quit during the lowdown. Long lines in places like Houston can extend beyond 4 hours. Senators are expected to take another vote today to fund TSA, but it's expected to fail again. And then tomorrow they head out of town, which is just incredible. For their spring recess, maybe they'll be confronted with their own actions when they disembark for travel themselves. But since they're no help, we're turning to you. The number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. With your travel experiences the past month during this partial shutdown, where are you on this? Politically, as I'm assuming you know, the shutdown is a result of Democrats demanding reform at ICE. Specifically, as you know, things like no masks, visible ID, warrants before entering a home. This is in the wake of the killings of Renée Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. So the number is 877-301-8970. Are you willing to tolerate long delays at the airport if it will bring some needed reforms to ICE, or is your position that there's never going to be a deal, it's just an inconvenience to you, and it's time to open up and fund TSA? 877-301-8970. I'm sitting here not with any air travel plans, and I'm 100% taking the position that the inconvenience is worth the potential benefit. Having said that, if I was on a 4-hour, I met a woman last night at an event at Pago, actually, one of my favorite restaurants, and her parents had just flown from Houston to San Francisco. They got to the airport 5 hours before the flight for a short domestic flight.
They made it.
They made it, and they were in line for more than 4 hours. Now, you know what's interesting? One of the questions you and I were broaching this morning is, why are we not experiencing the same situation at Logan? We have a couple of reports.
You did some investigative reporting
Well, I didn't
today,
really.
Jim.
Chris Kelly, our colleague, who's an engineer, talked to Jamie and said no ICE agents and no long lines.
Yep.
So we reached out to Rich Davey, who's head of Massport, and he says, great workers here. Seriously, I'm quoting from what he texted back. TSA employees in Boston are still showing up. It's remarkable in the face of all this. I'm truly grateful. We all should be, and please encourage listeners to thank a TSA worker when they're at the airport. It's Rich Davey, head of Massport.
Yeah, because the poor TSA people there, a lot of them are unable to pay their utility bills, their rent, their mortgage, their services being shut off, getting evicted. Some of them are sleeping in cars and selling their blood and plasma to make ends meet. This is according to the guy that's the agency's deputy administrator. So it's really really in dire straits. I like the Elon Musk idea. He says he'll pay them. I think it may be illegal, but everything else Trump does is illegal.
Well, it's illegal. No, but it's not. It's also
So
a conflict. The guy has zillions of dollars in government contracts. I'm sure it's a pay-to-play kind of deal.
Well,
so
you can't get any more pay-to-play than it already is.
the answer is Republican. These are such reasonable demands. And we'll talk to Chuck Todd about it in a few minutes. But our understanding, I think mine, I don't know about yours, that they were close to a deal, then Trump scotched the deal. Again, no masks like any other law enforcement officer in the United States of America. ID, so you can know that it's an officer, as opposed to what happened in Somerville when Ramesa Ozturk was pulled off the street and she could have been kidnapped.
Yeah, kidnapped and killed.
And
is what she was
warrants to
thinking.
go into houses, which is what the Constitution requires. These are not insane. And to the credit of the Democrats, they don't sound like they're folding.
The president does not want to get rid of the mask mandate, even though, as one of the texters already pointing out, the TSA people the ICE agents are not wearing masks at the airports.
Are you flying anywhere soon?
No.
Oh, if you were, I assume you're like me, a hypocrite, meaning you support that you're willing to tolerate the long lines as long as you're not in them.
Well, I get worried about it. Well, I think I'd have to get there 4 hours early like everybody else. But although I didn't know until today, or maybe it was yesterday, you flagged this story about the special privileges that politicians get at the airport.
They get escorts through the thing.
Yeah,
they can book multiple flights.
At government rates, and they can make last-minute changes and reserve seats on multiple flights on the same day. That's Delta Airlines. I don't know how many other airlines.
Well, Delta is rescinding this thing because they basically said if there's misery for regular customers, there should be misery for the people who are not undoing the pain.
Did you know that was even happening?
No, I didn't.
I didn't know that was happening.
It's shocking that they get special privileges.
And as you know,
shocking they have special health care. It's shocking
special health care, that
they're going home for recess while their business is undone.
Yeah, the Republicans that wouldn't extend these stipends for Obamacare, they have great A1 government health care, so they don't have to worry about their health care or their family's health care. Let's start with Jane. Oops, are we switching?
Jane in Concord.
Jane in Concord. Hi, Jane.
Hey, Jane.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Can I start by thanking you for your comments on a daily basis, which are honest and forthright and brave?
Wow.
I was thinking about it last night, and I really appreciate you, so I wanted to say that.
Well, by the way, in the spirit of fairness, since you were honest, most of them are forthright, honest, and brave. Not all of them, but for those which
some of them are sneaky
we really
and
appreciate
underhanded.
It. Thanks, Jane. You're very kind. What's up?
Yeah, most of them are forthright.
Thank you.
So regarding ICE, I have no problem with the idea of defunding ICE. They're an inefficient waste of taxpayer money, and they're really not serving any good purpose as far as I can tell. So why not take that money that they had in that so-called big, beautiful bill, which was like $80 billion extra dollars for ICE, and pay the TSA workers, and maybe we could get some more air traffic control money so that we have fewer plane crashes. Homeland Security just seems like a boondoggle of sorts.
Well, I don't think, realistically speaking, whether people think it's a good or bad idea, the Democratic demand is not to defund ICE. Some Democrats want to defund ICE. That's not their demand.
That's a bad thing. It's like defund the cops. I think you don't want that. Will come back to haunt the Democrats. I think
their demands are, I think, totally reasonable and mainstream to provide more safety, more security to people, reduce the terror factor. So that's where they're fighting, and I think they're picking the right fight. But there are a lot of people who agree with you, Jane. Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-89. By the way, just for whatever it's worth, the language may trouble you. I don't know anybody who's saying defund ICE who's saying they're not some portion of their work
Jim,
that needs to be done.
What happened with the line?
I agree with you. The language is troubling politically.
Back at the Democrats over and over again.
I agree. But the agency is corrupt. There's no question about it. And it needs, at minimum, serious reforms. Sam in Rhode Island. Hi.
Hello. I just feel like throughout everyone's life, there's always going to be a moment where you have the opportunity to trade convenience for doing something moral and having a backbone. And this is a good opportunity for everybody who's flying and utilizing airports to get a bit of a backbone and deal with delays so we can actually get some basic common sense reform from ICE.
I agree. But are you flying anytime soon?
Yeah, I will be probably in the next couple of months.
Well, I mean, so you're potentially one who would be effective. I mean, I think Margie and I are, of course, totally with you. And we'd love to hear, thank you for your call, Sam. We'd love to hear from people who have suffered through some of these delays and how torturous it was. You know what I think the thing is, if you know in advance, even though it's horrible to have to go to the airport hours in advance, it seems to me, unlike a delay that is unexpected, which is torturous, as we've all experienced, if you know that because of this standoff, you're going to have to get there early, then hopefully you plan for it. You bring a book, you bring something to read, something to listen to.
Suppose you're there by yourself and you have to go to the restroom. You think
While you're in line?
You think the people in front of you or behind you are going to let you back in when you come back?
I wouldn't. Of course.
I mean, that's the thing.
Of course they would.
But maybe not. Maybe they'd say, ha ha.
Or you bring one of those things. Larry David had that thing in the car where you could pee in the car. Do you remember that thing? He had one of those. I don't know, it was a curb or something. He had one of those little devices.
Okay, here's a texter who's echoing a sentiment I think that many people have expressed. We should pass a law that none of the politicians or their staff should be paid until federal budgets are passed.
Yeah. Well, by the way, to a really smart political move, I don't know if you heard this. We didn't talk about this morning. Ted Cruz yesterday said he wanted whoever pays the members of Congress to hold his check until this thing was resolved. And by the way, it's not a huge act to isn't that the least, realistically speaking, that every one of the 535 members of Congress should do?
Well,
don't pay me.
Have they ever done it?
I don't know.
I mean, have anybody said that they shouldn't have Cadillac health insurance until all Americans have at least Buick health insurance?
When I was on the Cambridge City Council, there was a vote about whether or not we should not take the pay increase.
Yeah.
I think I voted against the pay increase and took it. I think.
That's why.
That was the best of both worlds.
We're sneaky and underhanded.
I think that's what I did.
But that's a wonderful admission on your part.
Well, I'm not sure it's true, but I think it's what happened.
John,
I didn't say I wasn't going to take it. I said none of us should get it, and if we get it, you get it. Todd Natterborough.
Hi, Todd.
Hey, hi. Good morning. Thanks.
You too.
So I support not letting the politicians, have a big free pass, VIP, escort through. I remember specifically last year I was taking a flight out of Boston, and I have TSA pre. Congressman Alkenschloss was in the same line. He wasn't getting any special privileges, and I was happy to see it. I thanked him for what he was doing, and I believe what you're talking about, Delta, is not giving them the VIP treatment. I think all airlines should do it. And I also agree they shouldn't get paid either.
By the way, good for Auchincloss. Obviously, I wasn't aware of that. Needless to say, members of Congress don't have to take advantage of the privilege they're giving. Not. They can choose to be treated like everybody else, which obviously Auchincloss did, and good for him. Todd, thanks for the call.
It is kind of like a cattle call going to the airport. I mean, it's just
tough.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
But again, Logan, to the credit, I assume what Rich Davies said is true. TSA workers are making an even greater sacrifice in Boston. They're not only not getting paid like all their colleagues, they're showing up for work and not getting paid.
And think about the gas price impact on them, because a lot of them probably aren't able to live in Boston because it's so expensive, so they're having to drive from a long way away. A lot of people are suggesting that if you do go to the airport and you see a TSA worker, you go make sure you give them a tip.
I don't know if it's legal.
It's probably not, but you can just slip it in there kind of discreetly. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to give too much money to the guys that deliver the mail or women that deliver the mail either, but people.
Yeah, but no one knows. They don't see it doing that. By the way, let me just say, but at minimum, like Rich Davies suggested in his text, I'm sure most of you would thank him. I mean, you don't have to thank the ICE people necessarily. What did it say about in the song that we played yesterday when Ken Casey was here? They haven't been laid in ages. Is that why they're so angry? Whatever the line was in the song.
They were too scared to join the military and too dumb to be cops. He really kind of took care of them. That Citizens ICE song he has, the lyrics, you'll really enjoy them if you're not a fan of what's going on. And by the way, I was reading this morning how it takes 4 to 6 months to retrain TSA people. Yeah. So this could be a real problem for the World Cup. We just heard Henry say.
How about ICE? They're not trained. How are they doing this job? I mean, What are they? How are they trained? They essentially were ordered to a bunch of airports on Monday with 3 days' notice. Obviously, there was virtually no, if any, training whatsoever.
Well,
they didn't get 4 to 6.
You see them, they're not doing any screening. They're standing around with their long guns, talking to each other. Well,
didn't we learn in Minneapolis? They're also not trained to do local law enforcement. They're dead people in Minneapolis.
Correct.
I think we learned what I think should have been fairly obvious to begin with. Kim and Newton, hi.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, how are you?
We're
fine,
good,
thank you.
So I 100% agree with the demands we're making on ICE to be more transparent, but I feel like the position isn't that we're inconveniencing ourselves having to wait in long lines, but think about the TSA people that 2 more weeks, if these congressmen leave, they'll probably all be evicted.
It's very or at least suffering a lot.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Well, they probably should not leave until they get this taken care of. I mean, there's been some talk that they should.
Probably? Of course they shouldn't leave.
Well, I know, but they're planning on leaving tomorrow. We haven't heard that they're canceling their vacation. But it would be really adding disgrace to disgrace if they all take off, fly away, and let everybody else be suffering this. But we'll see.
Kim, you're totally right. I mean, I assume everybody who's been observing this is saying to themselves, if you weren't paid for a month, and not only not paid for a month, but have no expectation as to when you are going to be paid. It'd be one thing if you knew that in 10 days, and maybe you could get a bridge loan or something. I'm not saying it's pain-free, but at least you know.
Or your landlord would give you a break.
Right. You have no idea if it's going to be a week, another month, 3 months, and it's horrible. And I'm hoping that a lot of these TSA people have mixed feelings, meaning I hope they support what the Democrats are trying to do in terms of ICE reform, but they have to worry about themselves and their families, and it's horrible. It's really, really, really horrible. And by the way, let me say again, I know some of you may disagree, the requests by the Democrats are so common sense and so basic and so non-extreme that it should be done in 10 seconds if
masks,
Trump wasn't
IDs,
impossible.
Warrants before you go into somebody's house. Identification.
Yeah.
Let's go to, where are we going?
Luke.
Hi,
Turners
Luke.
Falls. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Yeah. I have 2 quick points.
Please.
About the Democrats. They should absolutely hold out for the extant constitutional rights and law enforcement rules for ICE agents. It has to be done. Otherwise, it's colossal weakness on their part. Yes, some TSA individuals are going to be put in a tight spot. But if this argument was being made in good faith by any Republicans, perhaps the president could sign an executive order saying that they are guaranteed to get paid. It will be this much, and they'll force it through in whatever channels that they have forced through everything else. My other point was...
By the way, that's a great point, by the way. They've found every vehicle, legal and not legal, to do whatever they want to do. If they were creative, they could do the exact same thing here.
We'll double check this with Chuck Todd.
They didn't want to use them as leverage.
Yeah.
But my understanding is Trump is the holdup.
He is.
So he's got to be convinced, because Republicans have gone in and made
some,
and always will be.
What's your second point, Luke? That was a good one.
Yes. The other thing was we had mentioned defunding the police as like a concept earlier.
Yeah.
And I think that to turn that right on its head, the idea of funding the police is actually kind of the aberrant point when you consider that you, in many instances, have traffic conductors with firearms training, or EMTs that have to learn about Fourth Amendment constitutional search and seizure rights. Like, those are different jobs, and they do all of them poorly when they're combined into one role. ICE is no different. They cannot do everything and be all things in any law enforcement situation.
I think that's obviously true, and secondly, even if they are competent at more than their basic job, they can't be terrorists while they're doing it. And I'll tell you, if I was walking down the street and some masked people with no identification grabbed me, I would, no matter how competent they were, I would be absolutely terrorize. And that's what the Democrats are trying to undo. Luke, thanks for the call. By the way, for those who think we're in the tank to the Democrats, we were criticizing Democrats for folding as they did when those, 8 senators compromised during the issue, X number of months ago.
Yes.
Here, they happen to have picked issues that, I repeat, are common sense, basic things that any decent person who is not president of the United States and a sadist should subscribe to. Ann in Lincoln, welcome.
Oh, yes. Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Thanks for taking my call.
Of course.
Hi.
Thanks for calling.
I'm totally in with the Democrats on sticking to their guns on this one. I think they're in the right, and it's all due to Trump that we're faced with these terrible long lines. I heard this morning, I listened to Morning Joe in the morning. They finally were talking this morning about what a great, target these long, dense lines of people just inside the doors of terminals are to potential terrorists and shooters. And I've been thinking this for days. And I wanted to add to the concern agents walking around with their automatic long gun rifles. Can you imagine just getting out of your car at the curb, walking through those doors at the terminal, dressed up like an ICE agent, an imposter, with your long gun in hand, and just shooting hundreds of people in the terminal waiting in those lines? And nobody's talking about this. I don't know how we're going to prevent that from happening, and I hope my mention
Well, you prevent it by happening.
doesn't give anybody ideas.
Yeah, prevent it by happening by having the Republicans convince their guy, Trump, that they should cut a deal and let these people get paid and go back to work, those who are not able to be at work. Thanks,
I do not know what the security deal is at the airport, but I would hope that there would be more than just walking in with a long gun when you're dressed like an ICE agent. I would hope there would be some kind of check. I don't know that.
Well, I assume there's two, but there are fewer TSA agents and there are ICE agents who have no skills at this particular function that they're being asked to perform. So I think the risk factor probably is heightened. I don't know if it's at the same level the caller suggested, but it's. I mean, I would assume it's heightened. So why don't we end where we began? If you were actually in the 4.5-hour line at Houston, would you still be supporting the Democrats' demands on ICE reform?
Yeah, I would.
Good.
I just don't think that's that much to ask. I mean, I know it's a hassle. I know it's a pain in the neck. I'd be worried that if I left to go to the bathroom, somebody would take my place. I have to get to the back of the line. I'm worried about all those things, but I don't think it's too much to ask. This is a big deal.
That's a principled act.
So is that what where you would be, Jim?
I'd be on Amtrak. That's what that is the principled position that I would take. And again, let me, if you weren't listening at the beginning, we texted with Rich Davey, head of Massport this morning, and our colleague Chris Kelly was out there too. The lines are not there, nor are there ICE agents at Logan. And what Rich Davey is telling us is because a huge percentage of the TSA workers, for whatever reason, are deciding to actually show up for work out there, and good for them, despite the pain that they're all suffering.
Okay, thank you for all your calls and texts. Sorry we couldn't get to them all. But coming up after this quick break, we're going to talk to political commentator Chuck Todd about how to get out of this war in Iraq and possible kind of shenanigans, insider trading on betting on this war. We're going to talk about that and more. I'm Marjorie Egan, Eastern Browdy. Listen to BPR, GBH, and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, with Nixon in China, composer John Adams made an opera out of Cold War theater and all the power and ceremony. Now, Renée, Fleming, and Thomas Hampson bring excerpts from the landmark work to Symphony Hall. They join us to talk about an opera that still feels modern, politically charged, and alive to the spectacle at the heart of public life. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Brightbound, helping students as young as middle school identify their strengths, explore their passions, and navigate a path to a rewarding career. Learn more at brite.bound.org. And the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where graduate students can build vital business skills through experience. Business Bootcamp Series, April 13th through 17th. northeastern.edu/business bootcamp.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow, Governor Healy joins us for an hour of Ask the Governor from 11 till noon. And in the noon hour, live music Friday with Grammy-winning bassist Oscar Sanyaro. Here now via Zoom, political analyst Chuck Todd, former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, host of the show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere. Also hosted the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com/@thechucktoddcast. And for those of us who would like a break in our miserable lives with a little bit of joy, he's just launched this week, which we'll talk to him about in a minute, together with J.A. Adonade, nicely pronounced, Jim, host of a new podcast called Dynastic, which Chuck will describe. Chuck, good to see you. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You guys are always so generous with all my projects. So
you're pretty generous
we're
guy
generous,
yourself.
Yeah, for your time, Chuck Todd. You're pretty busy. You're going to be even busier with this new sports thing, which we'll get to in just a second.
Yeah, well, it's a nice relief. It's sports history, so it's a little bit of Look, my wife and I were just discussing this because she's obsessed with this TV show, All Creatures Great and Small, about this rural vet.
Oh yeah.
And we were discussing, and we've had we've had really good feedback with what we're doing here with the sports history, and this is what people want to tune out, right? They want good news right now. We went through a period, Trump first term, culturally, we all went to dystopian, right? And our entertainment was very dystopian and all of this, and you can feel over the last 3 to 6 months that there's been this, and you see nostalgia, right? And it is our way, I think collectively, it is culturally our way of sort of dealing with the dread of what we're dealing with.
Well, we were going to hold this to the end, but since we've done it already, be specific. You're talking about great dynasties in the sports world.
Yes, right. And what made them, the idea is, they all do things. These franchises, there are moments that, got them on this path, right? And we start with the Dodgers, and we stumbled onto a second theme, but our theme going into it was they're barrier breakers, right? They, whether it's the barriers you think about immediately when you think of the Dodgers, Jackie Robinson, you can talk about what they've done with Asia, what they've done with Latin America. They were the first franchise to put a school at the Dominican Republic, but they also essentially created the blueprint for sports franchises to hold cities hostages, right? If it comes to stadium funds and to move, but they've always had to innovate because they were always chasing the Yankees, right? And arguably now they've caught them, and they now are in the 21st century, they're the Yankees of baseball again.
I was watching, just briefly as an aside yesterday on YouTube, Shohei Ohtani, I think, striking out 11 out of 12 batters. I mean, it's unbelievable. So it's called Dynastic. Once a month it drops. Yep. And the second one's on the Steelers, correct?
Second one's on the Steelers.
Okay, great.
We have two things. We sort of time it to where we think the sports world is in that moment. Great. And we want to tackle franchises that haven't been recently tackled in the documentary space.
Terrific. Right? Congratulations. We're pretty excited about
it. So, Chuck, congratulations from me as well. But we were just talking to listeners about, the mess at the airport with the long lines and everything. Is there, what do we think is going to happen deal-wise, and when, and are they all going to take off?
Passover and Easter, I'm going to bring up Passover and Easter because that's an important recess for the members of Congress.
Yeah.
And that's coming up in the next, it's supposed to come up with this, basically leaving this weekend, right? And they would be essentially gone for half of April. I would say under the normal rules of how Washington works, there's going to be a deal this weekend, right? They're not going to, they all want to leave town. They all want to get with their families. They all want to be Passover and Easter, all of those things. But I don't know, right? I mean, it is interesting how I would think that the current chaos would drive the pragmatist of both parties to the table. But it feels like just when you see one group come across with a pretty pragmatic offer, you think it's going to be accepted, like the first one, and then Trump walks away. Then Trump comes up with something that, okay, it's better than what they had provided. You think the Democrats come, and then they walk away. I think the bases of both parties just want to fight. And I think you've got these politicians in the middle here that are torn between sort of worrying this is all going to be back. I just think it's going to backsplash on everybody at some point. I look at this, I think Democrats need to find an exit ramp here, and for this reason. They've already won this argument. I mean, my goodness, when this shutdown started, Kristi Noem was still the Secretary of Homeland Security.
Right.
She's out. You had Mullen make pledges on to do some things that Democrats want to codify into law, including body cameras, and at least it does seem as if there's some movement on this mask issue, sort of limiting it just to the border and then no masks
Because that's a big
anywhere.
one. That's a big one, I think.
That is, I agree that that's a big one. So it is, I just don't know what the appetites are, right? This is what normally compromise is not rewarded in this case. I don't think either party wins with compromise. And I think when you're in a situation like that, welcome to this polarized.
Because he's been pretty adamant to date.
Boy, I don't know what he wants.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what he wants.
Yeah. I think he's pretty distracted by the war.
Right.
And the gas prices, and he knows he got himself into an impossible situation. What's so funny is candidate Donald Trump would be mocking President Donald Trump for getting himself bogged down in a stupid Middle East war. And I don't know, but you guys, I'm old enough to remember when that was actually something that got Trump distinguished Trump from the rest of the Republican field back in 2016.
Oh yeah, big time.
So, I think it's possible he's now in the spiral that you don't recover from. What we saw with George W. Bush in 2006, where there's this moment where nothing, it won't matter anymore, because his numbers just keep going lower and lower and lower. It's not like a collapse, but it's a weekly erosion at this point.
Well, you in one of your podcasts was talking about a decision Trump has to make, which I thought, wow, it's come to this, between the money his family can make from the UAE I always get the United Arab, and the Saudis, because his children and got this billions of money at stake here, versus pulling out or doing something else with the war that would he's caught between the country and money, basically.
Well, right. I mean, look, do we think the Saudis and the UAE made all these deals with the Trump family just because they thought it was a good business partners? Or did they do it because they wanted some leverage over the president, right? And, I mean, look, we're all not naive here. They want leverage over the president. What's the leverage? It's funny with the Gulf states, and I am... they're upset that the strait is closed, and yet they were quietly hoping the Americans and the Israelis would do their dirty work on Iran, right? Like, it's been this weird situation, and now the Gulf states are upset that they're now targets, and at the same time, they fear the regime staying in power in Iran. So that's what you see when you see the Saudis and UAE both pushing Trump to, quote, finish the job. It's, they fear sort of a status quo result. Well, I look at the political situation Trump is in, and remember, his voters are getting hurt more acutely at the moment. Rural Americans are in their car more. They drive more. You have to. Exurban America, you just drive more. So, and we know his supporters over-index on pickup trucks. What's the worst performing fuel efficiency vehicle in America, right? The pickup truck, particularly the Dodge Ram, Ford F-150, throw them all in there. And, I have a friend of mine who lives in a pretty red area, and he was just telling me, he goes, man, somebody I grew up with in high school, he said, man, I won't use the words he used, but boy, are they ticked off at how much their gas costs. Yeah. And he says about half of them are ready to blame Trump, but half of them are still deciding, still trying to blame Biden for it, he was telling me. But, it is, we know that negative partisanship is a healthy drug. But I do think Trump is torn here, and it's a financial problem if he walks, if the Gulf states feel like that they've been abandoned by Trump here. I mean, he really has just put U.S. prestige. I mean, he's got no good options left. Well, he's got to stop this war, yet leaving the regime in place, I mean, it's a disaster for America.
But let me just get in here. Yeah. As much as he obviously doesn't care about the pain for TSA workers. No, he does care about the lines, but I'd say he cares much more about gas prices hitting $4 and stock market dropping as it is. My naive position, I think, as recently as a couple of days ago, was he just lies and pulls out, says total victory. And then I said to myself, this so that hopefully those two things get comparably fixed. But the flips, and he can also say, if there isn't regime change, that there is regime change. What he can't do is say the Strait of Hormuz is open if it's not open. And so how does that...
And he broke it.
I know he did. So how does that... I mean, what Democrats are now saying is the 15-point plan that either Pakistan or we or whatever are proposing is essentially the Obama nuclear deal, which is one of the great painful ironies of all time. Is that enough? I mean, is there something in the works that's enough to convince the Iranians to give up their economic leverage around the Strait, or is there not?
Well, I keep trying to put myself in their shoes a little bit, right? What does Israel want to do? They want regime change. How do we know this? Benjamin Netanyahu says it.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you trust if you're them, do you trust a deal you cut with the U.S.? You already cut one. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying, I'm just trying to, what we don't do enough in this country, and certainly what the Trump administration didn't do, is put themselves in the regime's shoes. So they've had 2/3 of their leadership just taken out. They know they're targets of assassination. So I don't see the incentive they have to cut a deal.
By the way, before we continue, our colleagues are monitoring this cabinet meeting, the first one since the war started. The first reporter's question is, are you going to go in for the uranium? And Trump's response is, how could you possibly ask a question like that and expect an answer? So
well, the thing is, when you look at his situations and politically, okay, before the war, the Strait of Hormuz was open, and the Iranians were on a path to have a nuclear weapon.
Well, you don't know that they were on a path to create a nuclear. The Pentagon was saying it wasn't imminent.
Well, not imminent, but
I don't know who to believe on the nuclear weapon.
They had the enriched uranium.
Our president told us that we obliterated their nuclear program.
Right, that's right. Yeah. But they have this uranium that they're now talking about, which could eventually become a nuclear weapon, and we didn't have the people going in to inspect it like we did under the Obama agreement, correct? Mm-hmm. So now we've gone here, lost 13 Americans, hundreds wounded, all these other people that were, Lebanon's a mess, the civilians killed. Now the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and we still haven't solved the nuclear issue. So it's kind of like, okay, we destroyed their navy, as we know, and their ballistic missile capacity. But I mean, I don't think that's what we were so afraid of. We were afraid of a nuclear weapon.
Look, doesn't this feel, I don't know how many times we have to get a kick in the asymmetric response when you overwhelm an opponent militarily and then you don't win immediately and there isn't an immediate, frankly, regime change. Then you become, as the big power, vulnerable to the guerrilla warfare, asymmetrical warfare, right? We learned this in Vietnam. We learned this, the Russians learned this in Afghanistan. We apparently had to relearn the lesson in Afghanistan. What did we end up doing in Afghanistan? Handing the country right back to the same people that controlled it before we got there.
Yeah.
Right? And here we go again. And there's always been a part of me that Trump always assumes everybody thinks like he does, right? And if Trump were in the situation the Iranian leaders were in, he'd be like, I'm cutting a deal. I got to save my own skin. But this is a regime that is a theocracy. They've been in there 47 years. You would think Trump, understanding the crazy hold he has over his core followers, and he's only been their leader for 10 years. Does he really think 47 years, of dominance is just going to be rooted out like that? I mean, it really is
also,
pretty naive on his
part. A lot of people there are believing they're going on to paradise. They'll be martyred, and their pictures will be honored in the villages, as we saw with the Iranian scientists that were murdered. They became huge martyrs. I think Trump thinks other people are as afraid of dying as he is.
We have a minute.
He's got two bad options, right? If he wants any leverage over Iran, he's got to take control of the Strait. That means ground troops. If he wants any hope of recovering politically in time for the midterm elections, he's got to end this thing sooner rather than later, which potentially means leaving the regime in place, which means making all of his financial benefactors unhappy, and perhaps still creating chaos in the energy markets.
The reason I'm smiling like a moron at you in 30 seconds is I'm thinking about Trump, some speech last night where he said, prior presidents are saying, boy, they wish they had done exactly what I'm doing. Which one is that exactly? Which is the one who called me and said, boy,
I think it was the 40. Well, remember, the 40, he's pretty close with the 45th president.
Exactly. That's exactly the only one he's pretty close with. Chuck Todd, again, congratulations on the new deal. We'll be listening, and it's good to see you. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you very much, and congrats on the new sports thing.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with Chuck Todd, former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, host now Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, the Chuck Toddcast, and the newly launched podcast Dynastic. I said that correctly, with J.A. Undane. Chuck, thank you very much, and congrats. It sounds like a great podcast. Coming up, we are going to talk with 3 retired musicians who played for years with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. We're going to talk to them about Maestro Andres Nelsons, who has been shoved aside by the leadership over there. They're speaking out to support him after news that his contract will not be renewed. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NAPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Recent college graduates are really struggling in the job market, so much so that economists are highlighting rates of underemployment, tracking grads who work in jobs that don't require their degrees.
It's true what they say about the job market is a little tough right now.
But how often does this actually happen?
It's an easy question, a hard answer. Nobody has a consistent methodology to address the questions.
I'm Kurt Carapezza. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Explo, from international law to studio art. Explo's summer program helps middle schoolers to find their spark. Day and overnight options at explo.org/summer. General enrollment deadline April 1st. And Boston Ballet, presenting The Dream, a program pairing Frederick Ashton's Shakespeare-inspired ballet and a dynamic world premiere by emerging choreographer Michael Stromae. On stage now through March 29th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow. Governor Healy will join us tomorrow for an hour of Ask the Governor from 11 till noon. And Live Music Friday will be with Grammy-winning bassist Oscar Stagnaro. Again, that's tomorrow at the Boston Public Library. On 3:45 in the afternoon on Friday, March 6th, the management team at Boston Symphony Orchestra attempted what we in the news business call a Friday news dump by announcing they had effectively fired music director Andres Nelsons, saying the BSO and Nelsons, quote, were not aligned on future vision. We've requested interviews with the BSO president and CEO, Chad Smith, and the chair of the board, Barbara Hostetler. Their spokesperson says they're, quote, unable to schedule interviews at this time. They're too busy, but they hope to get back in touch with us, and they have an open invitation to join us here. The response to Nelson's firing from the public and musicians who have and are playing with him has been swift and loud. Many in the orchestra felt blindsided, and a lot of musicians have spoken out publicly in support of the maestro. Joined now in Studio 3 by violinist Jenny Shames, who played with the BSO for a mere 45 years. Nice to see you, Jenny. It's
Very
great
nice
to have you here.
Thank you.
Bassist Edwin Barker joins us on Zoom. He started playing with the BSO in 1976, and it's a pleasure to have you too. And bassoonist Richard Ranty played with the BSO for a mere 34 years by comparison. Rick, it's great to have you here as well.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome to all three of you. We're thrilled to have you with us.
Very much
Thanks
for
so
coming
much.
in. So, ladies first, Jenny, tell us about your time at the BSO.
Oh, my time at the BSO was a dream. I started very young, straight out of college. I am a Boston-rooted woman. My family all comes from Boston. Studied with the concertmaster of the Boston Symphony, Joseph Silverstein, and have loved the Boston Symphony since I'm a child. And to get in straight out of college and spend a magical 45 years where I can honestly say it was as magical at the end as it was at the beginning with one of the great orchestras of the world.
Now, Ed, my understanding, I'm doing the math. You were there a mere 48 years. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
Yes, you're correct, and I plead guilty.
Okay. So give us a minute on your time. I mean, it's hard to summarize a half century quickly, but give us your feel for your time there.
48 years, I've played with just about every major conductor there is and there was at that time. Before that point, I was in the Chicago Symphony, so I have experience playing in other major orchestras, and I did a brief stint with the New York Philharmonic as well. So in terms of the professional career, I've been around the block a few times.
Weren't you in 3 orchestras in 1 year at the beginning of this career?
I was fortunate to play within three major orchestras: the New York Philharmonic, Chicago Symphony, and Boston Symphony, within the space of a year and a half.
That's incredible. So, Rick, add your personal quick story too, if you could.
I had an early.
Go ahead.
I had an early start at the age of 19. I won a position in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and was there for 6 years, and came to Boston. And like Jenny and like Ed and like everybody in the orchestra, it was a dream come true. It wasn't just the orchestra, which was great. It was the absolute support of everyone around the orchestra, the town, the love of music, the great hall. It was a dream come true, and there wasn't a minute of my career that I wasn't absolutely grateful. I would look out there in Symphony Hall and almost weep with happiness.
We can see it in all three of your faces, I should say.
Well, that's what's so sad about this. It's like the dirty laundry coming out after all these years of thinking things were wonderful there. Tell us about working with Andris Nelsons.
Oh, well, you know Andris well.
We do. Been lucky to have him here many a time.
Andris is the last person I would think would be in a situation like this. Andris is it. Talk about a dream come true. Andris is everything you see. He's unassuming. He is kind. His love for music and for people and for his orchestra is palpable in everything he does. He is a dream to work with, and truly believes that we need music to survive.
And do you know how many music directors you performed with in your career?
Too numerous to mention here.
So how about Andris?
But I can tell you what is very special about Andris's musical leadership. He is the most collaborative conductor I've ever worked with. Not only that, he manages in many repertoire performances, especially with the core repertoire. We're talking about Brahms, Beethoven, and especially Shostakovich. He manages to channel that music, and there's always a moment on stage when the music just catches fire. And that is exceedingly, that's a wonderful thing. And as the other two were saying, there is nothing like playing in a great orchestra, in a great concert hall, with a great conductor playing great music. There is nothing like that, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. You know what's almost as good as that? You know what's almost as good as that? Sitting in the audience with a great orchestra.
Okay. Your three musicians been there for years and years and years. The musicians that are still there wrote these letters talking about being horrified. So what is going on here, Richard?
That's a big and broad question. The orchestra doesn't really know, because as the Globe editorial pointed out, there aren't a lot of answers, but the hints are very frightening. There seems to be a devaluation of the orchestra. The pinnacle of that devaluation is not consulting them about the very thing that they are experts at in this dismissal of Andres.
Your former colleagues, we should be clear, your former colleagues who are still with the orchestra had virtually no notice and clearly no consultation.
They were shocked, and they continue to be shocked, and there continue to be no answers. And in the vacuum, I received about 10 texts this morning. I think this might be going on. I think this might be going on. All the hints. There's no orchestra in the advertisements for Tanglewood. They're doing more pops programs in symphony season, which is great, but it's not what the orchestra is expert at. There's a devaluation of what they are, their core mission, and their voice, and it's very frightening.
You know, Jenny, let me read the words again that came out in that Friday statement. The BSO and Andres Nelsons are not aligned on the future vision. Do you have any idea what that means?
We have no idea what that means. They have only used those words, not aligned in the vision, have never elaborated what that vision is, and I'm frightened to know what it is, because Andres's future vision is the excellence of this orchestra and the creation of incredible music. I don't know what their vision could be that wouldn't involve that to some extent.
Part of what we've been hearing, Edwin, is that that Andres was spread too thin because he was with the other philharmonics. Do you think he was spread too thin?
I do not. I think his schedule is comparable to what other highly regarded music conductors is in the world. I mean, look, you can't really blame it on the artist. If you want to blame anything, you can blame it on the jet age. It is very easy to get from Europe to the United States and so on and so forth. Just about every great conductor I worked with has had multiple orchestras almost at the same time.
I think it enhances his ability to conduct us. It doesn't hurt Andres to hear the Vienna Philharmonic and come back and want some of their good qualities
Steal some of
too. Right.
Rick Randy, you didn't get to comment on working with Andres. What was that like for you?
I came in a few months after he started. I was on sabbatical, and I thought my orchestra had gone nuts. It's not the inclination for a musician to love their conductor. We are, at best, very skeptical. What's wrong with you people? You're not being professional. And within minutes, I fell in love with him. And it's not because I was personally comfortable. It's because his love and passion for the music inspired us to bring that out in the music. And people hear it. They go berserk in his concerts because they hear that love and passion. And he really enables us in a way that I've never seen from any other conductor.
There's so much. I mean, I'm not on the orchestra, obviously, but just talking to him and interviewing him and seeing the concert, there's almost a mystical quality about him that's kind of up in the clouds and the heavenly somewhere.
But
That's
on the
what
other
conductors
hand,
do.
Yeah.
But on the
That's
other
what
hand,
conductors do. They remember they don't make any sounds, do they? And so
that's a very good point.
We're the ones that make the sounds. They're the ones that shape the sounds. And just so the listeners have an understanding, there is a lot that goes on that stage during a performance. And Andres is remarkably collaborative. What's great about him is that he knows how to let the orchestra play because he respects the musicians, but then he also knows how to take control when he needs to.
We're talking, by the way, to Richard Renée, Jenny Shames, and Edwin Barker, who between them spent a mere 127 years, I just did the math, at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. Jenny, so all three of you said you have no idea what BSO and Andres Nelson's Not Alone in the Future Vision means. Does anybody have a does anybody have a thesis as to why this? Oh, you do.
I think we may be aligned on what we're afraid of this vision, which is the degradation of the meaning of the Boston Symphony. They're not even talking about another music director. It's almost as if they want to start presenting concerts of all sorts, which they deem more relatable to the public, whatever the public they have in mind, with us as a backup band for these concerts. There's a disdain almost for the idea of us being a great symphony orchestra, which we are nothing if not one of the great symphony orchestras.
But there has been an attendance issue in recent years. They seem to be desirous to put that on the shoulders of Andres Nelson's. Is that a fair burden to put on him? And if not, why not?
That is such an unfair burden to put on him. First of all, two reasons, and one is Andres himself. Andres, as much as we all love him and think he's one of the greatest conductors we know, he's also such a common man. He would love nothing more than the whole public of Boston to come in, and he would speak with them and spend time with them and bring them into our world. There's a problem with marketing and reaching out to the greater Boston public. There's mailings for Tango with this summer are all about the Pops concerts, the Popular Artist series. There's not one I've received that's anything about the Boston Symphony. Not one.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's odd.
Yeah. Ed, how does the reputation of the BSO survive this, regardless of outcome? We'll talk about what your preferred outcomes are in a second. How does the reputation survive? And a corollary question, why would, assuming this isn't resolved ultimately in Andres Nelson's favor, why would anybody take this job in this environment, Ed Barker?
Well, I think that's precisely it. I know for a fact that there are musicians who will consider not being in Boston because of the dysfunction that's going on now. It seems as though the organization is being sort of run from the top down in a very corporate way, and that the musicians are simply employees. And yes, we are employees, and we're glad to be. We're honored and proud to play in that orchestra, but we are also artists. What will happen in the future? I don't know. My feeling is the damage is done, and that there has to be a reckoning in terms of the communication between the players and the board and the management, that we are all on the same page, at least talking to each other and advising each other.
I think the orchestra is going to fight like hell for that.
The musicians you're talking about.
Yes, they're going to fight like hell to preserve it.
You know, you wrote in bold italics, I should say, in the letter that you sent, the actions of Chad, the head of the operation, and Barbara, who is the chair of the board, are deplorable. This is Jenny I'm speaking to. Frankly, they disgust me. What should they do in light of what seemed, you were both nodding when Ed was speaking about the reputation of the orchestra and its future. What should they do now? What is a desirable yet real world outcome, one that is plausible? And
that's a really difficult question. I'm going to tell you a little very fast why I wrote that.
Please do.
The Boston Symphony, as a corporation, as an organization, is one of the flagship organizations in the world. Musicians worldwide and orchestras worldwide envy the relationship that we had with our board and our trustees. We were all, for 145 years, on the same trajectory. We had the same goal, which was to bring the greatest music we possibly could to everybody we possibly could. In one fell swoop, 3 weeks ago, at 3:45 in the afternoon, Barbara and Chad broke that. to the degree that first the communication with the people who are here now needs to be changed. I don't know you get back the relationship that we had for so many years. That was cherished by us.
Can the two of them oversee the restoration of the reputation? Are any of you or your colleagues believe they have to go? I don't know.
Well, I can tell you that they've.
By the way, can I interrupt you 1 second and say we're going to continue this conversation for a few minutes. We're going to lose our friends at NEPM. Thank you very much, and we'll return to talking with you tomorrow. But we want to continue with Rick, Jenny, and Ed. Jenny, I'm sorry.
I can tell you, not only have they harmed the people on stage at Symphony Hall, but they've really gutted the artistic staff upstairs. And we're in a position now, with Andres gone and our artistic director, Tony Fogg, leaving the end of this year.
After Tanglewood, right?
After Tanglewood. There is nobody left to program the 27-28 season.
Why are you not saying, by the way, I'm not trying to force anything, obviously, on all of you. You're the people in the center of this. Are any of you of the opinion that Andres Nelsons can stay? And I assume you all think he should stay. But Rick, I'm looking at you. Can he?
Well, I think that's the hope, but it might not be a realistic hope. We don't know. But if that doesn't happen, then what has to replace it? Well, and this is my opinion, is in that vacuum, I think the orchestra is extremely highly qualified to have a very strong say, not symbolic, of the direction of the orchestra. They know musically. There's a lot of respect for the people who support us and give us money, but musically, they're the ones who know what's going on. I don't think it's in even a corporate interest to do what they do.
But if I may, and I don't mean to be abusive in my questions, but since all three of you and so many of your current and former colleagues have put out statements saying this is a horrible and wrong decision, I'll direct this at you, Ed. Why isn't the end of the sentence the only correct outcome is to continue Andres Nelson, should he want to? I have no idea if Andres wants this job. That's his decision. Ed, is that implausible?
It is not implausible. In fact, it's desirable that Andres should stay. I think that, again, if you have people making decisions, artistic decisions, that don't have an understanding of the institutional history of the hall, of the people that work at the hall, of all of that, then you're going to run into problems like this. So if anyone has to go, it has to be those that lack the understanding. And it's not. And the musicians, look, I thank God we're unionized, because I'm serious, because. If we weren't, our jobs would be in jeopardy right now.
Can I say something not as serious as this?
Yeah.
It is so. I just had this out-of-body experience. Marjorie and I have had the thrill of watching all three of you play, dressed up so pretty and looking beautiful, and we're looking at the three of you like normal people in our midst.
Yeah.
It's really an odd but wonderful experience,
But you know something, when you
say.
talk about the marketing thing, this resonates so much with me because I think a lot of people, you don't see these constant ads for the BSO, and I've had the experience with you and
Pointing
two or three of my friends of going with them to symphony for the first time. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you were just totally blown away.
Blown away.
And I have had this experience over and over with people that never heard a piece of classical music in their life. They get in there and they listen to a Brahms symphony or a Shostakovich
and watch the players.
And they are like mesmerized because it is so transformative. And I think that is the thing. Just reading all these stories, if you don't know about it, you don't know how much it costs, you don't get fooled by these stupid websites that I've fallen for many times. Why you think, why is the ticket $500? Because they've got all these secondary websites, which they don't do a very good job of separating themselves from. That happened to me like 2 years ago. So they don't make themselves known in the way that I think that they should, especially with younger people, especially with cheaper days, especially with those kinds of things.
Marjorie, come one, come all. The musicians are as you say, normal people. God, are we the most normal people in the world?
Oh my gosh!
And it's demeaning of the board to think that you have to dumb down everybody in Boston. Everybody would love to hear the Boston Symphony, and if they think otherwise, come to the hall. We'll prove you otherwise. I mean, it's an awesome experience to hear. It's
an awesome
if you can't
experience.
sell
Absolutely.
the best conductor, the best orchestra in the best hall with a summer season that knows no other in the world, if you can't sell that, you're not doing your job.
Jenny, you're about to say something.
Well, I was going to, a little bit more mundane, but if you want to welcome the public, you've got to welcome the public into the hall. And if you call Symphony Hall, you can't get a person on the phone.
Here.
If I didn't know about on the website, which doesn't work anyway.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a person to explain to me. Even when I call, I want a person to tell me where I can, the connection I need in the hall.
This is an insider.
This is as an insider. But I wouldn't come to the hall if there weren't a person that could take time to talk to me.
That's how I wound up paying $500 for 2 tickets to the BSO. I said, too bad, sorry.
Can I tell you a funny story? This summer I went to buy tickets for my final concert at Tanglewood. It was Lang Lang, and I knew it was going to sell out, so my family was coming. I needed to buy tickets. I couldn't negotiate that website and ended up with 35 tickets. I have thought.
Yeah.
Hope you have a lot of friends and family.
I was giving away those tickets right and left.
Can I end this by saying the following? And we hope you'll return, by the way, in happier times, or maybe in these times. I have to say, as someone who's been around a lot of conflict in my life.
You have?
No, I have, and you know I have.
All right.
The courage that you and your colleagues, both retired and current, by standing up and speaking as forthrightly and proudly as you have about Andres, about your work, about the BSO, is so inspiring, I have to say, for those of us who are dealing with other things in the world. So we thank you for that, and we really thank you for your time today, and we hope you come see us again.
We thank you for your time.
Very good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you all.
I hope you prevail.
Thank you.
Prevail. I hope the orchestra prevails. Thank you so much for coming in. We've
Great
been
to see you
speaking
all.
with bassoonist Richard Ronti, bassist Edward Barker, violinist Jenny Shames. All three spent much of their professional careers with the Boston Symphony Orchestra and have been speaking out in support of the long time, well, I don't know how long time.
13 years is a
That's
long
a pretty
time.
long time. Conductor and maestro Andres Nelsons. Thanks again for coming in.
And again, let's make clear, we have invited Chad Smith and Barbara Hostetler to join us. The invitation remains open. Any day with a little bit of notice, you'll have access to these microphones to respond in any way you choose.
Fantastic.
Okay, after a quick break, we're going to talk with Ricky Fuquan McGee. He's now working to reform the criminal legal system to make sure wrongly accused people don't wind up as he did in jail for 30 years wrongly. He joins us next with Jacqueline Fonseca, who works with the New England Innocence Project. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR, GBH, and NEPM streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Windhorse Counseling, where they believe healing happens when it feels human. Their counselors support children and adults through a collaborative approach and through the employment of therapy dogs. More about their team at windhorsecounseling.net.
And Porter Square Books, hosting Life of Pi author Jan Martel for his new novel, Son of Nobody, a retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of two commoners. April 3rd, info at portersquarebooks.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Marjorie,
Oh.
time's a little off here. Sorry.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Sorry about that. I was arranging my papers. I lost a few things, Jim, but you can help me out.
Want me to do
Anyway,
this? Oh, no, you're
no,
good.
I got it. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We, of course, you listen to us on 89.7 GBH. We're going to be at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. The governor's going to be with us, taking our questions and yours from 11 to noon. That's Maura Healy, of course. And we're also going to have this great Grammy-winning bassist, Oscar Stagnaro. He's going to play for Live Music Fantastic Friday. The mayor's going to be back, but that's the end of next month. We'll tell you later.
Okay, here we go. And we're a little bit behind, but thank you for sticking with us. We thought that conversation was important. Back in 98, Ricky Fuquan McGee was sentenced to life in prison without parole for the shooting death of a convenience store clerk who was killed during a robbery in the Fenway. McGee was 19 years old at the time. For 28 years, he maintained his innocence. Behind bars, he worked tirelessly to help other inmates, co-founding the Harriet Tubman Project in 2021. We'll talk a lot about that today, which brings together incarcerated people to learn how to advocate for their rights within the criminal justice system. In October of last year, he was released from prison after prosecutors filed a motion saying a combination of errors warranted him a new trial. Then, thanks to McGee's own advocacy and the Innocence Program at the Public Defender's Office, prosecutors officially dropped the murder case after new evidence discredited the testimony of the prosecution's main witness. We talked with Fuquan last November, just a few weeks after his re-entry, along with Jacqueline Fonseca, who's co-director of the Harriet Tubman Project and an intake coordinator for the New England Innocence Project. Both of them join us now again on Studio 3 for an update. Jacqueline, Fuquan, it's great to see you both. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you
it.
both
Look
for
like you
coming.
got shorter, too.
I did get a little shorter, yeah. You're a little taller, I
Yeah,
think,
I know.
give or take. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, okay. You start shrinking at a certain point, I guess, huh? Okay. So November you get out, right? So it's now middle of March. I'm sure it's not been easy in every sense.
I think the transitional piece, it wasn't easy. I mean, life's not easy, but I wasn't encountered with the kind of forecasted my freedom, and having support like Jacqueline, my brother Emerson, countless supporters there, my mom, my family. It's been instrumental, to kind of have their support. I wasn't overwhelmed with circumstances. I think I was overwhelmed with the fact that everyone was asking me if I'm overwhelmed. I think that piece, I'm like,
Okay.
But didn't you say to us when we saw you last time that even something as basic and necessary as an ID you were having trouble getting?
Yeah, very dehumanizing. I mean, I just got my driver's license, my official driver's license this week, right? But even my passport, there's complications with that. I should have that in a few weeks. But, living in a city, growing up in a city, and having to validate your identification when you've been in the state for the last 28 plus is just embarrassing, very dehumanizing. There were certain events that I had to go to, certain meetings I had to go to.
A little closer to the microphone.
I had to go to different meetings, different professional spaces, and they would ask me who I was, but I had to use a Herald article.
Oh my gosh.
True, really?
Yeah, that's true. This is at the Seaport. I went to go see a state rep, Russell Holmes, and then it's a big. Yeah, so
Holmes, yeah.
I went there. I didn't have any identification. I had to pull out a Globe article, and the guy let me upstairs. So it's very embarrassing, very dehumanizing. Because I can't say I did 28 years. I have to say I did 28 years wrongfully, meaning I was framed. So it's a different narrative. Because when you just say 28 years, they're like, you did 28 years in prison. So I have to give an explanation.
Jacqueline, explain what this terrific thing you guys are working on, this Harriet Tubman Project is. What's the agenda? What do you do?
Yeah, so we've been working since Fuquan's been incarcerated to advocate for his freedom. And it just grew out of pure passion between myself, Fuquan, and his friend that challenged me to really put aside some of the macro work we were doing and focus on his freedom. And in that, we created a blueprint in which now that he's home, we're helping people that are going through what we've just came out of and advocating for their loved ones as well.
What are the greatest obstacles, crises, problems that people who are incarcerated are facing that you're trying to address through your work?
Well, the very first one is the stigma, as Fuquan touched upon, is if they're incarcerated, they did something to deserve to be there.
Of course.
So as an advocate, someone on this side, and amplifying my voice is really the storytelling piece. How do we humanize this case? Or how do we humanize this quote unquote inmate that's being labeled, and giving the story of really who they are, where they've been, and where they're going. So really that's one of the biggest things that I focused on with Fuquan, was telling his story. I didn't even get too deep into his case. And that's something that anyone can do. They can tell their story of their loved one, but also as an impacted person, a mother, a daughter, a sister, or a girlfriend. How did this person's wrongful incarceration impact you, to really bring it a holistic view to it?
By the way, we're going to talk more about it, but it's theharriettubmanproject.org if you want to get information.
You know, Fuquan, I think you said before you were kind of pre-planning while you were still incarcerated what you were going to do when you get out. So what did that mean?
Well, you want to identify certain things that others have attempted to do and it led to failure, right? So you're thinking about employment, you're thinking about housing, like some of the basic things that everyone out here is normalized, they're living their lives, but you have to rebuild. So identification, right?
Yeah.
So it's coming up with a blueprint with a lot of this. I mean, there's going to be natural anxieties when I got my iPhone, right? And feeling a little demasculated because I had to ask people for basic things. And I'm someone that's independent. So having to ask so much, it's just embarrassing, right? You feel like a child with certain instances. But those have been the biggest things. Some of the hidden blind spots of assimilating back into society. But the macro things like housing and employment and how are you going to make a living? Those are some of the things that I thought about well in advance.
You know what I think is really, I mean, there's a lot of things already that are awful about being incarcerated, but that when someone is going to be getting out at some point, that there isn't some, okay, we need to help you with the skills that weren't available almost 30 years ago, like Googling online, how to use a computer, how to use an iPhone. Are there those kind of
No,
programs?
you know who it falls to? Formerly incarcerated people who are reaching out, from Sean Ellis, who we've talked to a ton of times. I know you know. People like Jacqueline. I mean, that's who it falls to.
But we was on the inside doing this. In 2014, we organized reentry events in prison. We was converting gymnasiums into reentry fairs, right? And it was ideas that came from me and the team we was with. Like, we wasn't waiting for them to give us programs for us to organize around our need areas. And reentry was work that we've been doing from 2014. So when I got released, I was already connected with different networks and resources based on that work, that we took the initiative. Because if it was up to the department, we wasn't able to be enrolled in a program, and just based on our sentence structure.
You know, Fuquan, I know you said you were sick of being asked a particular question a few minutes ago. I'm going to ask you one that I asked you that I know you're sick of being asked too. When Marjorie asked you what were you planning, you didn't even know that you were going to get out. I mean,
I didn't know when.
No, but because you're a positive person, right? I mean, but until you were, you could have died in prison, right?
So I think, Jim, what you have to look at too, right? I'm part of an ancestral line of fighting against systems, right? Harriet Tubman. Being a black in America, like, I've learned how to combat institutions. So if I was to magnify my conclusion to what they defined it by, I wouldn't be here. So there has to be some intervention with will and resiliency and fortitude. So I decided to lean into that as I was incorporating the literacy of law, of civics, criminal and civil. And I'm optimistic because of my involvement in it, but not the system itself.
You know, I'm curious to what you've been spending most of your time. I know you were at the Supreme Judicial Court for another guy we know is hearing, Stephen Pina, who actually gave me a beautiful Everyday Boston sweatshirt the other day. He delivered it at the library. A wonderful guy. I think he also spent 28 years.
Yeah. I know him a long time.
You were at his hearing the other day at the SJC.
Yeah.
And he was ordered a new trial, I think, in 25, give or take. I may get it over. Why were you there?
Well, me and Jackie were there. I know Stephen. I know Stephen for over 25 years. And see, in the prison environment, there's a community of people that you know are innocent. You know what I mean? I push Odair Fernandez. I push Valentino Facey. I push Laura Yespert because I was there with them. And Stephen was one of these guys, along with Sean Ellis, who we met when I was 21, and he's like the closest person I'm with in the system, right? But now we're both home. But what it is you know who's innocent. You studied certain people's cases, and the same advocacy you put into yourself, you put into yourself. So Steve was one of those guys. Now he's home. He was fighting for my freedom when I was on the other side. So it's only right that I show up. It's only right that I show up. And he's my friend, but just as an advocate and what they're doing to him, I think it was important that I was present for that.
That's
in
great.
addition
You're
to
both
Jackie and the Harriet Tubman Project.
You know, you last time you were here, I'm sorry, you both talked about one of the things you're working to reform is the discovery system in a bunch of states. Explain briefly, if you can, Jacqueline, what's flawed about it and what needs fixing in lots of states.
Yeah, for sure. I can speak on Massachusetts. One of the things that we've noticed, especially with these exonerations, that there's been a lot in the past 5 years, is that people were deprived of their prosecutor's case file. So when a defendant is fighting their case post-conviction, they only have the files from their defendant or their appellant attorney, maybe police files, but very rarely do they get those. But it's the police files that the prosecutors have that are building the case against them. So why can't they have that after a conviction is final to try to appeal that conviction? If the person convicted actually committed this crime, the prosecutor's file will show that and affirm it. If the person did not commit this crime, the prosecutor's file will affirm that. So that's one thing that we push very heavily, and thank you to former DA Rachel Rollins for giving that open file discovery, because it created a fair playing field.
But isn't there some requirement, forget post-conviction, pre-conviction, pre-trial, that there be a certain level of disclosure in terms of the prosecution so it's a fair fight, right?
Yes, but when things are being withheld intentionally or unintentionally, then you can't go into it really truly defending yourself to what is being brought out.
Just so I understand, one of the reforms you're looking for is for all jurisdictions to fully disgorge whatever they have pre-trial so that the defendant has a fair chance to be represented, right?
Yes, and the only person that really has the power to do that are the district attorneys in each county.
Right.
And
well, state law could also force them to do it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you ended up spending 3 decades in the can, right?
So let me explain this to you. There's an opportunity. Well, you're obligated to get exculpatory evidence from the prosecutor's office, but it's contingent on the prosecutor being transparent enough to say, listen, this is what we found.
Yeah.
And we know when it's a corrupt county, right? Any corrupt county, you know they're not going to disclose it. So what an open file does, it doesn't give the discretion to a prosecutor. It gives it to a defense team who knows the macro defense. They can't determine whether evidence is going to be of value or not to a defense. So they're selective on what they give. And if they don't know the defense strategy, they may kind of be selective on what they give a defendant. But open file, we get to get in there and get a copy of everything. And that's not what's being done.
Why is that? Why, if a legislator was sitting here who opposes that full release, what would his or her argument be? What is an argument for a defendant?
There's no argument, Jim. Listen, it's about transparency, right? Because think about what she said. If someone did it, the evidence is going to affirm that they did. But there's also, to my point, evidence that I didn't do it. But I never was in possession of that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to go to trial and defend for your life when they're not giving you 10,000 pages of evidence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I should say to you, by the way, just as personal experience, and I have not 1/100th the level of expertise that you two do, virtually every exoneree who I or Marjorie and I have interviewed in the 27 years we've been on the air, the reason they were convicted was because information was withheld or distorted or lied about.
They call it Brady violation.
Exactly, by the prosecution in their cases. We're talking to Jacqueline Fonseca and Fuquan McGee from the Harriet Tubman Project.
You know, let's just give a big picture here, which is just so enraging when you think about it. Okay, someone gets convicted and the case was screwed up. The witnesses were compromises, the evidence were compromises that didn't get corrupt. And you spend 28 years incarcerated where you couldn't be out making a living. You couldn't be out going to college or trade school or whatever, having a career. Then you get out and you're supposed to just figure it all out.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the state screwed up, but you are paying the price. It's really a very enraging situation.
You got to think about it. Like, I can look at it in a microcosm, but I'm in America.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not disillusioned about what America is. I'm not disillusioned about how jail is an extension of many failed institutions, right? So, but that's what literacy gave me. So when you have education and literacy, it kind of calms your anxieties, and you're like, you know what do I have to do now? So we try to educate others with the Harriet Tubman Project, because to your point, when you think about victims' families, they have all the support, but the defendant's family doesn't. And if someone says there's two victims, there's the victim's family and the defendant's family, but who's attending services to the defendant's family, right? That's what we're trying to serve, is to provide a literacy on all spectrums of the system.
I'm really glad you raised that, because I think when you were talking to one of our coworkers, Jacqueline, you talked about victims' families. And obviously, when there's an exoneration, what that means, I mean, I'll state the ridiculously obvious, is the person responsible for the pain that was caused to you and the people you love didn't suffer any consequences. So is there a relationship you try to forge through the Harriet Tubman Project, not just with people who are incarcerated and shouldn't be, and not just with people who've gotten out, but with the families of those victims who didn't get justice?
I think we're getting there. We're working in that direction. It takes a lot of building trust, of course, because they've been fed a narrative from the prosecutor for years, for decades, that this person committed this crime, and they even get into detail about where the bullet landed and the impact of that, and it creates resentment, and that's the only narrative that they ever hear, right? So it takes a lot of building trust to get to that point, and really, I think that one of the things that we're doing is partnership with organizations like We Are Better Together, the Daniel Warston Project, because what Miss Ruth Rollins is doing in that organization is taking the mothers of those that were victims of shootings or homicide, and those that have actually committed those crimes. And those two mothers are in rooms together, and they're having healing conversation, and they're having, storytelling and narrative that brings it together. So it takes time, and we're working towards that.
That's like the Lewis Brown Peace Foundation.
Exactly,
They do a lot of work, Clementine Cherry, with that. And actually, it was an odd thing to hear a former police commissioner talk about that when someone was shot. Remember what Bill Evans said?
He said,
I was stunned. He said that he visited the family of the victim and the family of the alleged shooter because the alleged shooter's family has just completely fallen apart.
Lost someone they loved.
I thought
too,
that was an unusual perspective for a police officer.
Why aren't you angrier than you appear? I've asked this. I don't get this. I really don't get it at all.
So when you look at Michael Jordan, right? You see him. He was a competitor. Yeah. But he acted on that through his actions, right?
Yeah.
And he was the greatest competitor that the people that counted him seen. For me, I just converted into this. Like, it doesn't go away, right? But people want to see anger through a punch or me yelling at somebody. But that's not going to do anything to change. Like, it's these spaces, right? And you counter the entity that arise that frustration through advocacy. I'm not trying to talk to you. I'm trying to dismantle you. You see what I'm saying? I don't have time to talk about it. I want to dismantle it. So my philosophy is different because I can't let that anxiety eat me up. I seen it do it to too many people. She said what it does to the victim's, the defendant's family. My family was devastated because of this.
Yeah.
So you may see me and I kept it together, but my family was devastated. And there needed to be that person that held it together, even though I was incarcerated, and that was me, right? So now it's translating into various spaces. But, Jim, I needed to be resilient. I needed to be optimistic. I needed to be goal-centered because I'm following the lineage of fighters. You see what I'm saying? That's why Harriet Tubman, we're not just doing this symbolically to write a book report on her. We're doing her work today on how it would look like. Because if prison is the modern-day slavery, who are the modern-day Harriets?
So if people want to help
speak... the racism in the criminal justice system we've all seen over and over again, and I think often white people are shocked because they're not dealing with the same kind of perspective.
How do people... Obviously, people can make contributions, but if people want to help with the work with the Harriet Tubman Project, how do they do that, Jacqueline?
Great question. We get that question a lot because we're still at the grassroots level, right? A lot of the work that we're doing is straight passion from our lived experiences. So as we're building out this structure and this organization, we're really debating on what business structure we truly want. Do we want to go the nonprofit route? Do we want to go the LLC route in consulting? So I think the best way to really add on right now is to just show up and be educated.
So go to theharriettubmanproject.org and learn about the work.
Go to the
you're doing.
website, reach out to us. We have a weekly Wednesday Zoom meeting. That's the
great.
best way for people to get involved,
Rachel
because when
Rollins
they
was on there last night.
Yeah,
Rachel Rollins was, yeah.
Yeah, so we do a lot of education, and that's really the first step. Because once you're educated on the problem and the solution, then it's easier to figure out how can I help. And not everything is monetary. Sometimes we need court support. Can you show up in person, or can you show up virtually on Zoom to support someone? Do you have a skill set like T-shirts that you can make?
You selling merch?
Not right now.
What is wrong with you? Sell merch. Come on.
I know.
What, is something wrong with that?
Let me explain something to you, Jim.
I wish you would, Fuquan. Go ahead, explain it to me.
So me being out, I see people using 501c3s as hustling, right?
But you don't have to use it as a hustle.
But I want people to see us as for who we are, right? We're not looking for money. We're just looking for time, right? We're looking for volunteerism, right? But we're not hustlers. We're doing this work because it's for the people. And I see too many people out here hustling victims, hustling people who really are in need of these services. So we're just here to show up. We're not going to be selling 1,000 shirts. But if someone wants a shirt and they want to donate through that, they can ultimately reach out to us.
I want a shirt.
Oh, we got one for you.
We definitely brought one.
Now, I didn't even know.
You probably got to use it as a headband or something.
I'll lose a few pounds.
Great.
Hey,
Thank you.
we'll have you back again in a couple of months.
Very
You can tell us what the
attractive, I
progress thing is. Fuquan and Jacqueline, congratulations on your work, and it's great to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Make
Thanks
sure
so
you
much.
wear that shirt on your arm or something.
Maybe make them bigger next time. You know what I mean, my friend?
Just a symbolic guest. I'm going to
Symbolic
make you a
gesture.
personal
We
one.
accept it.
Well, mine's
Good
going
to
to
see you
fit,
both.
so I'm all
Thanks.
set. Thank you very
Great
much
to
for
see you
coming
too.
in again. We've
Thanks.
been speaking with Fuquan McGee of the Harriet Tubman Project and Jacqueline Fonseca of the New England Innocence Project. Give me the website for the Harriet Tubman again.
TheHarriettTubmanProject.org.
TheHarriettTubmanProject.org. Okay. Thank you again for coming in.
Peace.
Coming up after this quick break, it's always an awkward transition. Today is Am I the A-hole? A day.
It is.
Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You heard what he said? Wow.
Yeah, I know. So, hold on. Oh no, that was something else. Okay.
It's coming
Am I
up.
the A-hole day? Yeah. Other people's food, and whether you need to put a refrigerator and lock it to keep people from stealing your food in the office, because we know a few people around here who've done that, and it's pretty disgraceful. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listen to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Stay in touch.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, do you check the weather forecast, use Google Maps, pay for something with your credit card? Well, all of that technology depends on satellites. And what's the biggest threat to satellites? Asteroids. We'll learn more about how scientists are making the plot of Armageddon a reality, only with far less drama and zero Ben Affleck. That's the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Coco Badakian & Sons, offering antique rugs since 1938. A range of hand-knotted, modern, and antique oriental rugs are available to view in their showroom at 808 Main Street, Winchester, or online at cocorug.com. And Goodnow Farms Chocolate. crafting single-origin chocolate made in New England. More information on the chocolate-making process and factory tours can be found at goodnowfarms.com.
And Heights Crossing, an assisted living and memory support community offering residents experiences aimed at promoting independence, inspiring curiosity, and encouraging connection with others. More at heightscrossing.com.
And the Boston Speaker Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, war photographer Lindsay Addario, and former U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Brad talk about transitions.
I know, it's always embarrassing.
It's always embarrassing. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Governor tomorrow from 11 to noon at the library. It's time for Thursday's Am I the A-Hole, where our staff pulls disagreements from the internet and brings them to us and you to debate. Today's scenario is a very personal one for me. It involves workplace lunch etiquette. In the poster's office, he shares a communal fridge with all of his coworkers, but he noticed that one of his 8 colleagues kept taking his lunches repeatedly. He tried bringing it up directly with them at a conference meeting, but nobody took accountability. So the guy bought his own fridge, mini fridge, and then that was enough. He put a lock on it to protect his midday peace of mind. Now all of his coworkers think he's being unreasonable and not a team player. Who's the jerk here? The guy who doesn't abide by the communal fridge concept, the one coworker who's been stealing his food, or maybe it's like an Agatha Christie murder on the Orient Express situation, and everybody's in on the crime. In that case, are the entire office a-holes. 877-301-897. Let me explain that a little more directly and clearly, since we're short on time. Is the a-hole the person who is buying his own refrigerator and locking it, or are the people who were intolerant of his concerns about his food being taken?
This is so easy.
What's easy?
It's the people that are stealing his lunch that are the jerks, and the person was finally driven to get their own refrigerator and put a lock on it because he's working with a bunch of kleptomaniacs.
So you're in favor of the fridge with a lock?
I am in favor of the fridge.
You don't think the lock is a bridge too far?
Well, they've been stealing this person's lunch over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's very upsetting if you're in your office all day long and you plan, you got a nice, peanut butter banana sandwich or maybe tuna on rye.
No one's stealing a peanut butter banana sandwich.
Okay, peanut butter, you got whatever you got, some fancy sandwich, and then you go to lunchtime and your lunch is gone. And then you got to go out and find lunch someplace else or order in or something like that. It's very distressing.
Marjorie, obviously you have never heard of the 24-hour rule. Is that correct? No, I'm going to explain something to you, and I'm going to try to help you out.
What's the 24-hour rule?
If something is left in a work refrigerator, a communal refrigerator, for 24 hours, give or take an hour in either direction.
How do you know what it is? How do you know what was put in?
I usually, how cops will put a little mark on your tire to see how long you parked at a meter? I occasionally do a mental note. If something that looks appealing, I would never take it at first glance.
Oh, okay.
If something looks appealing and it's there, I'm totally serious, and it's there the next day and it's just going to spoil, eat the damn thing. By the way, if the person didn't want you to take it, then they should have eaten it in timely fashion.
So Jim is part of the kleptocracy.
No, it's not a kleptocracy. No, it is a kleptocracy
problem.
If you take the food right away. You can't do that. You can't do that. But after a limited period of time, and the notion that someone would buy a refrigerator. By the way, we have our own little refrigerator here.
You're changing the story, Jim.
I'll change it any way I want.
This person was putting their lunch in the morning in anticipating of eating their lunch at lunchtime. And when they would go to get their lunch at lunchtime, it was purloined.
Well, maybe you shouldn't steal that. Okay. 877-301-8970 is the number. But how antisocial. By the way, I could live with this person getting his own mini fridge. He puts a lock on the refrigerator. We have a refrigerator in the hall here that essentially is just for milk and coffee.
That's right.
We make our own coffee.
We're getting a new one now.
I know we are. Let's not tell anybody.
Refrigerator broke.
Okay, fine. It's breaking. Well,
it's warm.
I haven't put a lock on the damn thing.
It's not working.
I wouldn't put a lock on it. That is antisocial.
Because all you can fit in this little teeny tiny refrigerator is something 3 inches tall. So, it's not even, you can't fit anything in there. So it's not a different story.
877-301-8970. Who's the a-hole here? The person who arguably took the food of somebody else's within a small period of time, or the person who decided to buy his own refrigerator and put a lock on it, which is the ultimate bird flipping to all of your coworkers. Incredibly rude.
Well, what about the rudeness of the people that steal this poor guy's lunch every day? And he goes out to buy his lunch, doesn't even make it. He gets it from this restaurant because he doesn't like to cook his own, or isn't good at cooking his own meals. So he goes out and buys a lunch for like $7 or $8, puts it in the refrigerator, goes to eat it, and somebody's stolen it. And you think that's fine.
I mean, he's just got to eat a little more quickly. That's the... It's the only thing I can think of. I mean, he's obviously leaving it lying around.
Okay. If he comes in at 8, he better eat the thing by 8:15.
And by the
all
way,
bets are off.
with the thing that I'm shocked, we're going to get to your calls in 30 seconds, that you haven't said to me, Jim, if anybody ever took your food, you would literally call out the state police. You know what the difference is? I eat it quickly. When I bring it in, if it's good enough to eat, I eat the damn thing.
Okay.
And we move on.
Well,
so it's not an issue.
A lot of people are suspicious here, including Art from West Bridgewater, who says, I bet Jim would be the first to spring for the fridge and lock it if it was his lunch that were being stolen.
Did I lock our refrigerator? Yes or no?
You can't fit anything in there. The only thing we ever put in there is my milk, which I bring from home.
The new refrigerator ordered today?
Yeah.
Has lock. No, it doesn't. Let's take some calls. 877. 970 is it's a little tiny thing, but it's a little bit bigger is the number. Let's go to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth in Gloucester. Thank you for calling.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly. Yes. Excellent.
Okay. First of all, the a-hole is the person stealing the lunch.
Absolutely.
Second of all, does he know exactly who it is that's stealing the lunch? Because if he does, what he could do at a staff meeting is, in front of everybody, I know you're taking my lunch, and I feel so bad. If you need me to make an extra lunch for you every day because you can't get food for yourself, I would be so happy to do that. Just let me know, right?
Okay. I mean, I hear it's a legitimate point of view.
Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth,
Listen to this
for your
one.
call.
Years ago, at the end of the workday, I went to collect my pumped breast milk out of the work fridge. One bottle was half gone. When I expressed my surprise, a coworker's face dropped as he was drinking his coffee with my baby's breast milk in it.
That is great. That is a good one.
They learn their lesson.
You ever take anybody else's food out of the refrigerator? Look at me when you answer, because you don't look at me. I know
you know what I've taken?
Oh, good. Milk.
Cream.
Yeah,
when I...
Did you ask that person?
Nope.
What is that, crime SUV or whatever that's called?
I was
SVL?
desperate. I was in
or
desperate
what
straits. Law and Order SVUs. My favorite show.
Okay.
I can watch that for hours.
You do, don't you? It's incredible.
Well, now I'm watching that other one about the hospital. What's it called? The Pit.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm on the second season. But other than that, I would watch.
You know what I did at a prior job? I feel like this is an opportunity to admit everything I've done. This is really horrible. I can't believe I started this. There was a sandwich sitting in the refrigerator. This is actually our old radio job, and I don't know whose sandwich it was. I did not take the whole sandwich. I took the whole sandwich out. It had been sitting there for a day, and I had forgotten to bring lunch, and I looked around. No one saw that I was there, and it had been there the day before, and I was about to eat it, which would have been horrible, but I then felt guilty. I did something worse. You know what I did?
You threw it out.
I took a bite and put it back. I had totally forgotten about that till this second.
The truth of the story here is you took a bite.
I did. I put it back.
And you didn't like it, and then you put it back.
Well, maybe it was. Maybe that was what it was. I would do a lot of things. I just would never put a lock on a refrigerator. It'd be humiliating. It's the ultimate antisocial act.
Here's another one.
Go ahead.
My wife had her lunch repeatedly stolen at work. We solved it by making a super hot sauce from habanero.
Habanero, yeah.
Peppers.
It's a kind of pepper.
So the person got a shock when they took a bite out of her sandwich. Okay, let's go.
Molly and Needham.
Hi, Molly.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So I have, first of all, the person taking the lunch is the a-hole.
Absolutely.
No one has the right to do that.
That's right.
But depending the size of the office, because I'm kind of like a namby-pamby, I would buy like some cookies or pretzels and put them from time to time in the lunchroom and say, these are from me, Molly. I'm offering them to please. I'm putting my name on my lunch. Please don't steal it. And someone would really have to be an a-hole to do that.
Yeah.
That's right.
If you write
That's
a personal
very
note,
good point.
that is... Yeah, thank you, Molly.
Sort of
What?
A peace offering.
I understand that. It's a beautiful move on your part. Very lovely. Thank you, Molly, for your call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
Okay, here's somebody on the side of the person with the luck.
Oh, good.
The guy who bought his own fridge is the a-hole. He can't be the only one who's had food stolen. He set a bad, selfish example by buying his own fridge. Did he offer his safe haven to any trusted colleague? Seriously,
that's
if
a
it were
good
me,
question.
I just wouldn't refrigerate my lunch and accept the risk of food poisoning rather than risk my food being stolen or alienated.
You said that person was on the
colleagues.
side of the locker. They weren't on the side of the locker. They're trashing the locker. Because the locker was not sharing their space, sharing their special space. And isn't that what they're saying?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Okay, fine. We're all confused. I mean, we're so upset. I'm worried about my lunch. Is it still in the refrigerator?
I think maybe this person switched their position halfway through the text.
Yeah, which is very similar to a co-host I have in radio.
Yeah, see if I can figure it out.
Why don't you read it? Take it home. By the way. Why don't you take it home, read it a little bit, and then report back tomorrow. Maybe in writing to everybody, okay? 877-301-8970.
He's not on the side of the person with the lock.
I said that.
Yeah.
You said that he was on the side of the person with the lock.
I thought he was.
By the way, let me just say something to show that I'm not as unreasonable. While I still believe in the 24-hour rule, which, by the way, I did create personally, there is nothing worse in the world. I will sympathize with the other people. If you bring in something that you really put some energy into, that you've been looking forward to all day, and you get there and it's gone.
Exactly.
It is heartbreaking in a way that's almost indescribable.
It's like sometimes when I forget to bring my food in
indescribable?
here. It's indescribable.
Yeah.
You get in, you make something, you spent the morning making something to bring in for lunch, and you realize you forgot it.
When Marjorie leaves her, if she has a particularly good lunch, I don't take a bite of a sandwich without asking. But if she brings in something that's in a bowl, when she goes to the women's room, I usually have some of it and then smooth over the top. So, because believe me, she won't know what's going on. Okay? Trying to be honest in this segment makes it more interesting to the listeners. Let's go to Benita in Dartmouth.
Hi, Benita.
Hello, Benita. How are you?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Benita. Thank you for my call.
Thank you.
I have the best solution. First of all, I think the a-hole is the person who's stealing lunches. Well, I worked for a radio station years ago.
Oh.
And I always had leftovers because I was in sales and, going out and back and forth. So we kind of knew who was doing it because he would brag and say, I had the best meal. So I had some chili and rice in a styrofoam thing. I even put my name on it. And it was gone. So what I did was I put another one in there a couple of days later, but I spent 2 bars of X-Flat.
Oh, you did not. That is not true. Is that true?
Honestly. And he ate it. And he stopped taking stuff out of the refrigerator.
Well, what a shock that is, Benita.
Well,
Thank you, Benita.
You're not the only one, though, who has these ideas. Listen to this. I'm totally with Marjorie on this one. I would not put a lock in the refrigerator, but a trap device on the refrigerator door that tases the would-be thief. How about that one? That's Kevin from New Hampshire. And then somebody else thinks you should put one of those, Simply Safe cameras on the fridge, or the cameras that people put outside their house, so they find people.
But there is a middle ground
Getting
here.
caught in the act.
That caller said a minute ago.
Imagine how embarrassed you'd be
What?
if, on the morning meeting, if they had like a Zoom meeting, there was a video of you stealing somebody's lunch from the fridge.
I wouldn't do it again. Yeah.
That would
Marjorie
be very
likes
embarrassing. They should put one of those signs on it, protected by, what do you call the places, the cameras everybody
but generally those people really don't have cameras. They just buy a little sticker that says they have a camera, and really, that is what people should have cameras. So that's sad, but
somebody
they should.
just said, Marjorie, nobody's buying a lunch for $7 or $8. Try $20, which is another point.
That is another
Inflation
serious
in
problem.
Sandwiches, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, 877-301-8970 is the number.
point.
The question, we should reset the question is.
Reset it, please.
The question is this.
Mm-hmm.
This person keeps getting their lunch stolen. They go to buy their lunch every day, and it's gone. They mention it to their colleagues, and nobody. They don't seem to think it's a big problem. So the person gets frustrated and buys their own little fridge for their own little sandwich and puts a lock on it. And Jim thinks that person is the a-hole, and I would say the poor person can't take it anymore, Jim. Every day they're waiting for their turkey and cheese and lettuce and tomato and mayonnaise. Yep.
Eat faster. That's the solution. You don't need a refrigerator. You don't need a lock. Speed it up. Let's go to Bill in Boylston. Bill, welcome to the show. Hi.
Jim, I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear you.
I hear you.
William Carlos Williams had a response for this. He said, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. And just yesterday, I ate a sandwich named Bruce.
A sandwich?
Named Bruce?
I don't think you got any of that.
Named Bruce?
We did hear it.
I don't think you got any of that. But anyway, I love your show, and I'm laughing out loud.
Thank you.
Okay. I like the note about the plums to confess to your evil deed. I mean, that's kind of nice. A person with...
the poem is called This Is Just to Say. Here is I'll read the whole poem. The Bruce thing, I think, was the Caller's edition.
Okay.
I never heard this poem before. It is by William Carlos Williams. This is beautiful. I'm so glad you called, Caller. I've eaten the plums that were in the icebox, in which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. How great is that poem? That was a great addition to this conversation.
So do you de-a-hole yourself? If you write a poem
about it?
About the plums?
Yeah.
Or the tuna on rye?
Let me tell you something. Every time I've had something good that was somebody else's, I would write a poem. I mean, if that was the price of eating someone else's food, here's somebody who looks like a criminal. That would be Edgar B. Herrick III.
Yeah.
Raise your right hand. Have you ever eaten anybody else's food in a communal refrigerator?
No.
That is not
hold
true.
on for a second.
Seriously, no.
Office lore has it that you are the purloiner of people's sandwiches. That Edgar
really?
B.
That is the word on the street.
That's the word on the
I
street,
had no
Edgar.
idea. I'm kind of honored. No, it's
So the
definitely
reason
not me, but like that's cool that people think that I'm the person who's
allegedly haven't done it is because you feel guilt-ridden, or you're worried about getting caught.
No, I don't engage with the workplace fridge at all.
You don't even go in there?
No, I don't go in there. I don't bring my own stuff in that needs to be refrigerated. I can barely keep my fridge at home in working order with food. You know what I mean? The idea of trying to do it elsewhere is too much. So I don't engage at all.
You do DoorDash?
I'll either eat out or DoorDash or skip lunch or just bring something that doesn't need to be refrigerated.
They got bagels, really good bagels, that place
They
down the
do,
street.
yeah. I go they bagel sandwiches down there. It's really nice, little turkey and cheese on it.
Why would anybody skip lunch?
A sandwich named Bruce or
Can I
whatever?
ask you one last question?
I didn't get that either.
Would you be willing to take a polygraph? That's the question.
Absolutely. Let's do that live on the air.
Can you arrange that, Jamie,
let's get a
please?
polygraph.
Thank you.
I think we have one of those ring cameras on the
that's
refrigerator.
SUV
in the
or whatever
office.
that is again.
Law and Order SVU. Special Victims Unit.
Oh, sorry.
It's these terrible stories about these children. I don't know why I watch it. It's awful, but I do. Because they solve it all in an hour.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you doing there?
Let me ask you something, Jim.
Please,
do you feel like you have enough keeping you up at night? Do you want me to add to the pile of things you should be worrying about at night?
I actually do worry about quite a bit.
I figure you
why
do.
Not? Go ahead.
Well, no, so here's one. So, our lives in many ways are ruled by satellites. Our cell phones, the whole financial system, all of that operating.
Yeah.
There are a lot of asteroids out there, including small asteroids that we really, up till now, have not been great at keeping an eye on. If they smash into the satellites, we're in real trouble. But we're going to talk with some MIT scientists who have a fix.
Oh, good. Do the satellites steal sandwiches as well?
The satellites could probably help us.
I've been worried about meteors hitting my house. I have. I really have.
Really?
So I'll be listening. I have.
Great.
Who doesn't?
AI, the little robots are going to be stealing your sandwiches pretty soon, right?
Okay.
They make the sandwich, they steal the sandwich.
See the one marching in with Melania, the robot that was marching into the thing with it was all dressed up in white.
Yeah.
Just like her suit was white.
That's her next husband, actually. I don't know if you're aware. As soon as he's out of the White House.
Okay. Thank you for listening to another edition of BPR 89.7 GBH. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we are back at the Boston Public Library with the March edition of Ask the Governor. Maura Healy's going to be with us from 11 to noon. Then we're going to have some great live music with 4-time Grammy Award-winning bassist Oscar Stagnaro and Ahead of Saturday's No Kings protest, we're going to speak with Rebecca Winter, who is running the thing. She's executive director of Mass 5051. I want to thank our great crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Many people have suffered by having their sandwiches stolen here by Jim. Additional support from Ronan Keene. You're not stolen his sandwich yet, but he's only been here for a couple of weeks.
That's because I didn't know where it was.
Colin Cockrell, you stole his sandwich too.
I stole half the sandwich at Colin's.
Okay.
Half.
Our engineer, John
He said,
Parker.
take what you want. I asked him.
It was cold and delicious.
Our executive producer is Jay Bologna. The Curiosity Desk starts
Bruce,
right after us. And the Culture Show with Giant Bones starts at 2. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Marjorie Egan.
See ya. Oh, Jim Bradley.
Yep.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's how-tos and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Revision Energy, a renewable energy company building and servicing solar, batteries, and air source heat pumps for local homes and businesses for over 20 years. Revision Energy. Revision your power. More at revisionenergy.com. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, with everything going on in our troubled world, the question is often, could things get any worse? Well, if a rogue asteroid were to start careening toward Earth, the answer would be a resounding, yeah, probably. Lucky for us, there's a team at MIT on the case. After that, it's strikes of a different sort. Baseball season is officially underway with a new system that can call balls and strikes more accurately than the umps.
We've had our first ABS challenge.
Little sinker up and in.
The call that was a strike
has been confirmed.
Will it forever change the face of America's pastime? And we'll stay on baseball for a conversation with the author of Baseball the Movie. Yeah, about baseball movies. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. As Iran and the United States push their respective demands to stop the war, Israel is speeding up its military strikes in Iran ahead of a possible ceasefire. That is according to a person briefed on the matter who spoke with NPR's Daniel Estrin in Tel Aviv.
The person who did not have authorization to speak publicly says the Israeli military is speeding up its targeting in Iran over the next 48 hours, focusing on trying to hit Iran's arms factories as much as possible in case a ceasefire is declared. While the U.S. and Iran both want a deal to end the war, there are wide gaps between their demands. Pakistan is emerging as a potential host for talks. An official in Islamabad not authorized to speak publicly tells NPR Pakistan's interior minister held a secret meeting with Iran's ambassador today. Israel wants to keep pressing on in the war, and Iran continues targeting Israel with missile fire towards central Israel and the Jerusalem area. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
AAA says on average people are paying nearly $4 for a gallon of regular gasoline in the United States, the result of ongoing oil shipping disruptions from Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. At President Trump's cabinet meeting today, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent sought to reassure Americans.
Many people, especially the Democrats, underestimate the will of the American people for short-term volatility for 50 years of safety that we are going to have on the other side of this. And I believe energy prices will be lower, inflation will be lower.
NPR's Scott Horsley highlights one way the government's trying to control the price surge.
The EPA will allow gas stations to keep selling fuel with a higher ethanol content this summer. The move is likely to cause some additional air pollution. It's intended to keep a lid on gas prices.
That's NPR's Scott Horsley. The United Kingdom is facing the sharpest downgrade to its forecast for economic growth for any major economy, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It says many major economies will be affected, with the UK being among the worst. Here's NPR's Ruth Sherlock.
The OECD has slashed its forecast for Britain's economic growth from 1.2% down to 0.7%. And it says inflation is also predicted to be higher than expected. This comes as it downgrades its forecasts for many of the world's major economies. The halt in shipments through the critical Strait of Hormuz waterway and the closure and damage of some energy infrastructure is causing energy prices to soar, as well as that of other vital commodities such as fertilizer, which is pushing up the cost of everything from car and heating fuel to food. Among the G7 countries, the OECD says the only country predicted to have higher inflation than the UK is the United States. Ruth Sherlock, NPR News, United Kingdom.
It's NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A suspended Plymouth police officer and her husband were arrested this morning after they were accused last week of sexually assaulting a man when he was a child and living in their home. According to reports, the Office of Plymouth District Attorney Timothy Cruz says 31-year-old Officer Samantha Perlene and her husband, 37-year-old Daniel Foran, were arrested at their home without incident this morning. Spokesperson for Cruz says the two were taken to the State Police Barracks in Middleborough, where they were booked and transported to the Plymouth court for arraignment. Legal filings show Perlene is facing 4 counts of felony aggravated child rape and 4 with force. We're still waiting for charges against Foran. After months of back and forth, the Brookline Select Board voted last night to place a $23.25 million property tax override question on the ballot this May. Brookline.News reports that it's finalizing the dollar amount for the override at a meeting on Tuesday. The board opted for a single all-or-nothing ballot question rather than a multi-tiered approach that would have given voters choices of different levels of funding and varying tax increases. If voters approve it, the override would include $5.31 million for town departments and close to $18 million for Brookline schools to be spent over the next 3 years. In sports, all eyes on the 2026 Boston Red Sox today as they play the season opener in Cincinnati. First pitch just after 4 o'clock. 61 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Question for you. Do you check the weather forecast? Do you use Google Maps? Pay for something with your credit card? Well, all of that technology depends on satellites. And what is the biggest threat to satellites? Asteroids. But our astronomical fate is not futile. Scientists have developed technology to help identify and track asteroids that are likely to approach Earth and even mitigate their impact. To talk more about that, I am joined by 3 MIT scientists. Julien de Wit is an associate professor of planetary science. We've got Saverino Cambioni and Artem Burdanov, who are both research scientists. Hello to you all. Welcome to the Curiosity Desk.
Hello, thanks for having us.
I want to start off with a little bit of sound. This is from one of your labs or workplaces. I'm not sure which one, but let's hear a little bit of this here if we want to get a sense of what it's like to work in the asteroid business.
They're all over the place! Bogies are breaching the atmosphere from Finland down the North American seaboard.
Yep, there it is. That's just a typical Monday for these guys. No, we kid. That is obviously a movie from the 1998 movie Armageddon. That sound from the movie Armageddon, which I'm sure you guys get all the time. Let's talk about it, though, in reality. Working on asteroids, is it dramatic like this?
It is not. So what I'm going to say is that there's no need to panic. Things are totally under control.
Very, very good. No need to panic. All right, but let's talk about what we are talking about when we talk about asteroids, right? Because I do think, obviously there's the Hollywood movie thing. There's the, people say, well, the dinosaurs, there was an asteroid hit Earth, or there's, the big one's going to come. But we're talking about that there are much smaller asteroids that could do all kinds of damage, even, short of, landing on the planet and blowing up, right? And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so the asteroids that are like the size of a bus, like they are way more common, we think, than asteroids like dinosaur-killing asteroids. And because they are more common, it's more probable that they are going to impact Earth, but also not Earth, but also the moon. And these it's what we are focusing on. It's like the smaller ones that we actually don't know them much because they are so small that only now we are getting to be discovered.
Yeah, so let's talk about the challenge of seeing these smaller ones. So you said about the size of a bus. So that gives us kind of relative idea of what we're talking about. It's been a while that we've been able to largely identify very large asteroids and kind of plot out where they're going. Am I correct there?
Yeah, you're correct. So in the late 90s, Congress mandated NASA along the way to find all these large, dinosaur-killing kinds or extinction threat level asteroids. So that's kilometer and above. And now we're looking at a completely different space, much smaller, size of a bus, so 10 meter and above. And those are coming not on timescales of every, hundreds of millions of years. So it's mostly theoretical planetary defense there.
Yep.
They're coming every decade or so. And so that's what we're working on. The things that really matters for us, especially now that we have this whole space-based infrastructures. We mentioned satellites and so forth.
Yeah, so let's talk about the space infrastructure because obviously, one of the things I think, people talk about, we know, smaller asteroids, there's that, well, it'll, burn up in the atmosphere while it's coming into the Earth. And so it's not really going to pose that much of a threat. But as you point out, as we talked about, we got a whole bunch of stuff outside of the atmosphere right now where they aren't going to burn up before they get hit. So can you give us a sense of what's out there, what we're talking about when we talk about space infrastructure that we're worried about?
Yeah, so the thing is that dinosaurs didn't need to care about asteroids hitting the moon, and humanity a century ago also didn't need to care about it. But now, if a relatively small asteroid hits the moon, it won't burn in the atmosphere like if it would happen if it goes
hit Earth.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if that asteroid hits the moon, a lot of debris will be expelled. And all those particles, big and small, they will affect the fleet of satellites around Earth. And that's a big problem, potential problem. So we need to also take that into account in our future.
Okay, so what are we doing about it? What have we done that is fairly new or novel that is allowing us to see what we couldn't see before?
Yeah, I think a big takeaway message for the audience is that as we get more and more sensitive, because we have technology in space, we're also more and more able to do things about it, because this same technology that makes us vulnerable allow us to detect these asteroids. And so, for example, when we're doing exoplanetary science, meaning searching for life around other worlds, we use the James Webb Space Telescope at the same time to find objects not at the size of 1 kilometer, but down to 10 meters. And for the first time, we opened a window on these small size asteroids that are of relevance for day-to-day planetary defense.
Yeah.
So the technology is there.
What do we do if we see one? What's the plan? I mean, I think, if folks follow space science at all, DART was, something that made a lot of news, a lot of headlines. It was like, hey, we basically, seems like I could be getting this wrong, but essentially crashed something into the side of an asteroid to see if we could knock it off its orbit a little bit. It turns out we did, right?
Yeah, we have now this technology. We are able to do it. And the interesting thing is that, like, smaller asteroids, their masses is also lower, and so we may need also like smaller satellites to crash into them to deflect their orbits. So we are actually actively working on that to create like the idea of mini darts that perhaps they are even more. We can just send easier because they cost less, and so we can be more reactive to a threat that can come along.
If I can add to that,
go ahead.
Because you really asked, what would we do?
Yeah, what would we do?
The good thing is that later last year, we did stumble into a full-scale planetary defense exercise for this new era with smaller asteroids. The asteroid 2024 YR4 was discovered just 2 weeks after we put out with Artem a paper that shows how we can be sensitive to this object. And we predicted the path to follow. And since we've done this twofold operational realization using new technology to get its size. The size means how much energy it can deposit when it explodes on the moon or on Earth. And then we use a James Webb Space Telescope to go and retrieve it just a couple of weeks ago all the way out there. And thanks to these measurements, we've been able to say if it's coming for the moon or Earth, we knew it wasn't, it's not coming to the moon anymore.
Yeah.
But with current technology, we do know that we will, over the course of the next 5-10 years, find the few asteroids that will be coming for Earth and the moon. And so the next step at that point will be to do what Saverio said, move towards mitigation strategies, the kind of mission that we'll have to use to protect Earth and the moon this century.
Go and retrieve it means we managed to see it, to observe it, not like physically go and...
not like a spaceship shaped like a hand that we send up that closes
That's
around.
That's what we did on Monday. We were there out in space, just taking care of it.
Just grab it with your hand.
But
explain that again.
It was phenomenal in the sense that this small asteroid, like a bus size, it was so far away. It was all the way, in the far part of the main belt, and we managed to use to analyze data from the James Webb Space Telescope to see that far away and to refine its orbit, and then to eventually rule out the possibility of it impacting the moon in 2032. And that's what we'll be doing, we think, for many other asteroids that will be discovered soon.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk. We're speaking with the MIT planetary scientists Julien de Wit, Saverio Cambioni, and Artem Burdanov, and we're talking about asteroids, threat of asteroids. I think people generally know the asteroid belt is a thing and where it is, but
between Mars and Jupiter.
There you go, between Mars and Jupiter. So, but we talk about what the fact that it's out there, the fact that that asteroids, I guess, come off of it or out of it. Give us a little overview of where these asteroids are and how often are they coming off?
Yeah, so while the material that was left over from the formation of planets, it's what we think are the asteroids and the asteroid belts. And these have been evolving, colliding with each other and being knocked out by planets for billions of years. And the interaction with the planets, but also small forces, thermal forces, they can slowly push them out of the belt, where they then enter in near Earth space. And this it's what makes them dangerous, because they can cross the orbit of Earth, but also makes an opportunity for science. We have been sending a spacecraft to sample these asteroids to really get to understanding of what were the processes that led to the formation of Earth, or even the origin of life.
When we talk about the asteroid, one of the things I think I struggle with a little bit when I'm thinking about space stuff is you sort of have two things true at the same time. One, sometimes the numbers that are just out there that are used are so big that in regular human existence you think, holy cow, that's a lot, right? And then you stop and you go, but wait a minute, space is also really, 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 really big. So it's kind of hard sometimes to get a scale in your head of how crowded or how big a thing is. So how volatile is it? How many asteroids? Is it crowded? Are they smashing into each other every second? No. Or is it nice and slow and most of the time everything's fine and then every once in a while, boom?
Yeah, it's not Star Wars. It's not you have to go through an asteroid belt and just crowd. It is not.
I am so disappointed.
Now in terms of number, until we did this work with Artem, we knew of about 2 million kilometer and above asteroids. All right. Okay. And now we know of about 10 billion or so when we account for asteroids down to 10 meter in size. That's the number. But again, it's relatable in the sense that we've seen what happened over Ohio a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a 2 meter coming in. We had one over Europe a few weeks before that. And then in terms of decameter size, is bus size and above, Chelyabinsk in 2013.
Yeah,
right?
I take that personally. At that time, I lived in the Urals, and that's where that asteroid struck. So not far from me.
Wow, that's ironic. You're in the business, and here's an asteroid striking.
It's a vendetta.
Yeah, no kidding.
So for the people listening, the point is that we're going to have more and more of these 24 YR4 cases where it makes a news. It is a size that requires us to follow up on. So that's one.
Yeah.
Second, over the next few years, we will find the ones that are coming for us. So we will be preparing for active planetary defense mission, like a mini-DART kind of mission.
Yeah.
And that's really what's exciting to us. And then if you really want to get the crowd excited, the technology we'll be developing to take care of this small asteroid is the technology we need to do asteroid mining.
Yeah, I wanted to talk. You took me right there, because asteroid mining was something I want to talk about. This is something we sort of hear a lot about. We hear a lot of speculation about, and obviously, it's not too hard to draw the line to say, like, well, if we're finding science that is going to allow us to capture an asteroid, we just say go to one and kind of be there. It's not a leap to say then, well, can we land something on it? Can we mine it? Where do things stand with asteroid mining?
They're moving. It's been slow, but now that we're looking at asteroids of sizes that are, somehow... So let's remember for the audience that the smaller you are, the more you have. If you have 100-meter asteroids, for every 100-meter asteroid, you have 1,010-meter asteroid. Right?
Okay.
So that's really an important factor. So as we move to these smaller sizes, there are many more of them. They're easier to capture.
Yep.
They're just like more versatile. And so that, I think, opens a new door for planetary resources.
Yeah, and I want to also add that, we live in a very exciting time. It's really an asteroid revolution going on, because on top of instruments like James Webb Space Telescope, there is also a telescope that just started looking at the sky in Chile, the Vera Rubin Observatory, that promises to increase the number of asteroids that we know by a factor of 10. And so our spatial situational awareness of what's out there, it's really about to change, dramatically.
And what does that change portend? Like, are we worried about what we're going to learn, or are we like, no, it's better to know?
Yeah, it's better to know. We'll know more. We'll know more asteroids that about to impact us, but they will be generally much smaller. So it's not a big threat, but still it's better to know about them.
And humanity has been driven by space, right? With our understanding of time, space, when I mean time, I mean seasons, all of that is due to our relationship to space. We've moved through many different worldview changes, from geocentric to heliocentric, from flat Earth to round Earth, you name it. And now is the time where we're really moving into space. And the way to reliably move into space is to use resources from space. We cannot just move things to, build a full city on the moon.
Yeah.
Using stuff from space will be the way to go.
And, obviously, folks who are interested in space, keeping their Artemis is about to happen. We're talking about return to the moon. You have multiple countries saying that they want to establish bases or presences that are on the moon that are a little bit more like full-time things. Data centers, yeah. So, you sort of hinted at this before, but when we talk about understanding where asteroids are and where they're going to hit, just look at the moon. You can see the moon has been hit a couple of times before.
Actually, there are even amateur astronomers taking high-speed images of the moon, and you can see flashes there happening. Thus, the little meteors and asteroids hitting the moon. So it happens all the time. It's just they're very small.
So obviously, this is something. If you're going to spend billions of dollars to put something up on the moon, you want to make sure you're going to be able to not have it be hit by an asteroid, I would think.
$1 trillion worth asteroids. Some of these asteroids would be trillions of dollars. So
really?
That's the fun part, yeah.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, I want to know. So one of the things I love to talk to scientists about is like what you actually do day to day. Because I think we have this notion. You hear about this stuff coming down the pike. You read about these advances that happen in space, and you're like, that's amazing. And you're like, science is working on it. But like, what is the work? So can you each kind of break down like what is it that you actually spend your time doing to kind of get us from point A to point B? Let's start with you.
Well, the first thing is just having an idea and then thinking about it, sometimes in the background, then maybe writing that idea on a paper, doing some simple calculations. But most of the time, I'd say it's just coding, analyzing the data, trying to interpret it.
So it's just like hammering away at data, just like...
Yeah, there's so much data now, I would say not maybe enough people to properly take care of it, even though we have AI now.
Yeah.
But still, we need human brains.
Human brains. How about for you, Saverio?
Yeah, so I ask questions. There are very big questions in my head. Like how the Earth formed, like how are we alone, like how life came to be. These are questions that take like decades, even centuries to answer. So I kind of try to boil them down in something I can do within day-to-day basis, and that leads to formulate a hypothesis. For example, answer questions like how many asteroids are there that could impact the moon within our lifetime. Can we get to a knowledge of the asteroids that we can then link bus-sized asteroids to meteorites that Julien was saying, like we see we see on Earth almost like on a month report, and that distill to a series of daily to days activities, which is indeed analyzing data, running models to approximate the reality in a way that allow us to understand the model.
And how about for you, Julien?
Yeah, I guess in summary, humanity has done science in a data-starved regime. We didn't have much data to really make sense of the universe. But now, over the last 20 years, humanity has just been pumping out sensor all over the place.
Yeah.
So we're swimming in an era that is just data-rich. And so what we do in our group and at MIT is mine that data to reveal the universe like never before, revealing new populations of asteroids, new populations of planets, and just making sense of the universe like we've never done.
What's the sort of side effect of the work that you're doing, which is to say, whether it be new tech that comes out of it as you're developing these things that filter out into the wider population, or as you're trying to develop the ability to see asteroids in a way we haven't been able to see them before? What else are we seeing, if anything, that we haven't seen before?
So some problems in planetary sciences, our field, are so hard to solve that gets they produce innovations in the way in which we analyze data, and we get a sense of this large amount of data that comes from the availability of sensors that we have. So that could be, for example, a byproduct. A normal byproduct is that every time that we try to answer a question, other 10 questions pop up, which is great. I mean, keep us in business.
Yeah, it's like gremlins. It's like pouring water on a gremlin every day.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I imagine has to be, I don't know if frustrating is the word, but one of the things that I suspect could be frustrating in the work that you do when you talk about planetary science, you're talking about celestial bodies, is that you can't just quickly get there and look at it with your own eyes or touch it with your own hands. It's like, in order to capture an asteroid, for example, you're talking about, I don't know, millions, billions of dollars to work out tech over time that can do the thing and get there just to get a look at it. If you could pick one spot to really just be able to go to and look at and say, I want to look at this thing, what would it be? Where would you go?
Yeah, so the good thing with what we're talking about, that we don't have to go that far. A lot of asteroids are passing between Earth and the moon every year. We're talking about, in the decameter, so 10 meter and above the bus size, 100 of asteroids or so, give or take, that pass in that area. So if we move towards a space where we have the technology to play with them, then we're basically playing with them in our backyard.
So you're feeling good. You're I get to look at everything you want to see.
We have the technology to see them and to play with them close by.
There is actually an amazing opportunity to go to something that will come very close to. Nature is offering really a 1 in 1,000 year experiment when an asteroid in 2029 will zip by between the orbit of the Earth, within the orbit of the Moon, and that's a lot of people in the planetary science community are getting ready to look at this asteroid and see how they tie and the interaction with the gravity of Earth will change it. And that asteroid is by definition a dangerous one. It will not impact Earth, but it may in the future. And so we want to understand better these asteroids. And so
it's called Apophis.
What's it called, Artem?
Yeah. Apophis.
Apophis?
The god of death. Because at the time,
god of death.
if fares well,
it's just a nickname. Just a nickname.
You're like this. We're really excited. This asteroid's coming very close to Earth. We named it after the god of death, but don't worry, it's gonna be fine.
It's not gonna come for Earth, so we know it now.
All right, we've been speaking with MIT planetary scientists Julien de Wit, Saverio Cambioni, and Artem Burdanov about the impact asteroids could have on space infrastructure and how we're protecting them. Thank you all for joining us here on the Curiosity Desk. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Just ahead, the term balls and strikes is a symbol of neutrality, but how true is that? Well, the system is putting it to the test for this year's Major League Baseball season. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, with Nixon in China, composer John Adams made an opera out of Cold War theater and all the power and ceremony. Now, Renée, Fleming, and Thomas Hampson bring excerpts from the landmark work to Symphony Hall. They join us to talk about an opera that still feels modern, politically charged, and alive, to the spectacle at the heart of public life. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you and Porter Square Books, hosting Life of Pi author Jan Martel for his new novel, Son of Nobody, a retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of two commoners. April 3rd, info at portersquarebooks.com. And White Flower Farm, offering home gardeners a wide selection of plants, tools, and supplies for the growing season ahead. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. For fans of America's pastime, baseball season is officially in full swing. The Red Sox play their first game today against Cincinnati. Now, you may have heard some commotion about a new element at play this year, ABS. That stands for Automatic Balls and Strikes. It gives teams the option to look at an automated tracking of a pitch and check if an umpire's call was accurate. Proponents are excited at the chance to eliminate human error, though while some critics say human error is part of baseball's charm. Here to answer our questions around the changes, we're joined in the studio by GBH News reporter Esteban Bustillos. Esteban, welcome back to the Curiosity Desk.
Edgar, thanks for having me. Great segment on the asteroids, hot asteroid take.
Yeah.
Armageddon, better movie, Deep Impact, better film, if that makes any sense.
Interesting.
But anyways, we're here to talk about ABS.
Which is in some ways like an asteroid strike on the sort of soul of baseball, according to some. So
maybe.
Yeah, let's talk about basically what it is. What's new this season? This is something that's been around in some form or fashion at different sort of different levels of baseball, but it's new in the MLB this year.
Right. So basically, batters, catchers, pitchers, they can, if they disagree with an umpire's call, if it's a ball or a strike, tap the top of their head and be like, hey, I want to challenge that. Now, this isn't necessarily, it's not like HAL 9000 is going to be back there every plate being like, I'm sorry, Dave, that was a strike. That's not what's happening. You know, the term robo-umps has been kind of thrown out there. That's not necessarily what's true. The umpires are still calling out the majority of balls and strikes. Now, sometimes maybe that call is going to be overturned by this system, but it's not like they're overtaking, that the machines are coming for us. This isn't necessarily AI taking somebody's job, at least not yet.
No, I was going to say not yet. If you're a slippery slope type person, you're kind of like, this is the first step. Yeah. Okay, so in actuality, how's it going to work? It's two challenges per team, per game, and then if you get it right,
you keep it. Right, but if you lose the challenge, you lose the challenge. So if you have two, you're wrong, now you're down to one, and then you can go down to 0, which we were talking about. It brings up like a really great question, is like, because it's player driven, it's sort of like tennis. It's, you know, there are coaches, managers challenges in baseball, but it's not for balls and strikes. So since this is player driven, like, who do you trust to make calls? Like high on the index has to probably be like Mookie Betts. Low, is it like Bryce Harper, who has like the most ejections in Major League Baseball? It's like, hey man, maybe you shouldn't be making this call. So it does really, like, what is the strategy? How do you play into that? And something you and I also were discussing, height is a big issue here.
Yeah, I find this to be the most sort of fascinating part of it, because, you know, the width of the plate is the width of the plate,
right,
and the strike zone feels easy enough to determine.
More or less, right.
But the height of the strike zone is different for every player, and every player has a different stance. Some of them crouch quite low, and the umpire is supposed to sort of make the strike zone based on the way the player is standing in the box right in front of them. But this system isn't quite going to do it that way.
Yeah, so this is actually really interesting. So according to ESPN, this has been something that the teams themselves are very concerned about. The league, they measured every player's height for ABS specifically. And they went as detailed as measuring them in the morning, because apparently in the morning, you're taller than you are at night. You lose height over the course of the day.
Oh, really?
I don't know how that works. Maybe ESPN is just lying to us, but that's apparently the truth. And the stance thing is an issue. So if you have like a higher stance, if you're up higher, you're probably gonna get more calls your way. But if you're someone who crouches, if you're low in your stance, that may kind of mess up, because again, like if it's chest height based on the height you were measured at
when you're standing up,
right? Yeah, so
when
I think
you're tallest in the morning,
right? So I think that's if you're doing like a game 7 and it's like 11:30 at night. Maybe you shrunk a little bit. Who knows? Maybe that factors into it too. So yeah, I think they're still trying to figure out where this goes.
Can you put this in the context of, on the one hand, it's like I think there is a notion of baseball as this very pure American pastime, a game that the statistics through the generations are somewhat comparable because very little change comes to the game. But I sit here now in 2026 and I think about just in the last decade or so, right? You've mentioned there's already coaches' challenges in some form or fashion. We've changed how we do extra innings games by adding a runner on second base. There's a pitch clock, which is new in recent years, and now this. Where does this go? Sort of put it in the context of these other changes that have come to baseball recently. Like, is it that big a deal?
I don't necessarily think it's that big a deal. I mean, so a few years ago, I did some reporting on a sort of a version of this. It was the Atlantic League of Pro Baseball, which is an independent league. And they were using ABS to call the strikes, to call the balls up front. Now, the umpire would still have the ultimate say, because he'd get like a radio piece in his ear and say, okay, that was a ball, that was a strike. But the umpire could overturn it based on what they saw. This isn't that, right? Yeah. The umpire is still mostly in control. It's sort of like instant replay in a way that necessarily hasn't come to baseball quite yet until now. So I think it's, again, it's not the robo-ump thing. That's not necessarily what this is. But as we pointed out, I think it is, baseball has been maybe more reluctant. It's sort of bought into its own nostalgia
and mythology.
Right. It's like, and it's not like Joe DiMaggio's out there anymore, guys. Like, some change has to come. But it is, like, what do you value more? It's that historically people have, like, I don't know if you liked the idea that there's human error put into this.
And people make that argument, right? Like, it's like human error is part of the game of baseball. It's part of the metaphor of human life and the American experience and all of that.
Right. And that's all well and true. And again, it's like the nostalgia thing. And then I'm like thinking, like, man, how many of these guys were just on roids the whole time that we didn't know? So, but so again, like, that's sort of the myth. But it is like a competing factor of like, what do you want more in sports? Do you want the accuracy, or do you want the sport itself? Because sports are kind of inherently chaotic, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, if you look at, like, I was thinking about the NBA, for example, when they put in the coaches challenge a few years ago. And one of the problems I could think of is just like, how many times do we see a foul call and a player is doing the little circle with their finger in the air saying challenge, and the replay shows, and they just like, they smack the person across the face, and it's like, I didn't hit him. What are you talking about? So I wonder, like, are we gonna run into that? Like, how many people are gonna use this? How often is it gonna be? The first challenge last night, Jose Caballero for the Yankees, their shortstop, failed, actually. He challenged it, was wrong. And I do say the funniest thing to me about this is on MLB.com. The way that was worded, the first automated ball strike challenge powered by T-Mobile. It has its own brand deal.
Yeah.
Let's just lean into the dystopia. I'm going opposite. Lean into the dystopia. Maybe get the ABS challenge powered by OpenAI, powered by Palantir. Let's just go all the way in. Why not? We're here. The computers are coming for our jobs. Let's just embrace it.
All right. So I'm going to ask you for a little bit of a prediction. Although I don't love predictions, but we'll say this: you cover sports for us here at GBH. You'll be keeping your eye on the Red Sox and baseball through the season. Like how soon is it that we have a major controversy? Like, how far into the season do we get till we have a major controversy where somebody like runs out of challenges, or they think a challenge is wrong, and it just blows up the world?
Oh, I think it's inevitable. I don't know how soon. What I can see coming if again, it's sort of like a slippery slope. You start with this, how soon until there's like an Elon Musk type is like, we should just replace all human refs, all human umpires rather, altogether. Let's just let the computers do it because, accuracy is more important. But then what do you lose? And moreover, what do you lose when you lose this trust in these people who have dedicated their professional lives to knowing the rules? That's a big question I think we have to answer.
All right, we've speaking with GBH News' Esteban Bustillos. Esteban, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Edgar.
Just ahead, we're sticking with baseball. We're stuck on baseball like a pitcher with too much pine tar. After a quick break, it's Baseball at the Movies with the author of Baseball the Movie. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go anywhere.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering local, long-distance, office, and piano moving with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com. And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering over 90 short courses that pair MIT research with hands-on frameworks designed to be applied immediately at work. More at executive.mit.edu.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. In his book, Baseball the Movie, Noah Gittell looks at the relationship between two American pastimes, baseball and movies. In it, he takes us through the history of baseball and film over decades and how those films are a reflection on the way American values have changed. Without giving too much away, Gittell does restore the Bad News Bears to its rightful place as a subversive work of art, not just a movie with kids who swear. Noah Gittell is a film critic and sports writer and author of Baseball the Movie, and we began our conversation talking about a shared identity between Red Sox fans and his hometown Mets.
I will say that I feel simpatico with Red Sox fans, even though I am a Mets fan, because we're both franchises and fan bases that have had to deal with a culture of losing for many years. Now, you guys have broken that, and I'm happy for you. And my team
says
broke
through
it.
gritted teeth.
I am. At least, we have a common enemy, at least, in the Yankees. So that is another thing that has always bonded me to Red Sox fans. But in 1986, when I was 6 years old, I was not bonded to Red Sox fans. I was a new baseball fan. It was my first year following the Mets, following any baseball team. And the Mets were, as you remember, incredible that year. They were in first place by 20 games and by August, and everything was going very smoothly. So I assumed, of course, that they would win the World Series. And then it looked for a little while like that wasn't going to happen. And I was shocked. And then, well, you know what happened. For the Mets, it was a miracle. For the Reds, it was something else. But that was definitely the moment that I became hooked on baseball forever. And I've been searching for that feeling ever since. And I have not experienced it since then. But I found that the movies sort of provide that for me. I didn't know at the time that I was on the verge of this great baseball movie boom that occurred in the late 80s and early 90s. I thought it was just normal that good, cathartic baseball movies would be coming out every year. And those films were really important in supporting my burgeoning fandom because they showed me all the stuff that baseball on TV or in person can't show me. They showed me who these people were and what their fears and dreams and anxieties and perversions were. They showed me what they talk about in the clubhouse and in the dugout and unveiled the great mysteries of the game. What do they talk about at a mound conference? What are an umpire and a manager saying to each other when they're face-to-face screaming at each other? And it really filled out my love for the game. And I think I wouldn't be the baseball fan I am today if it weren't for those films. So sorry to ramble, but I think it's not a coincidence that over the last 10 or 15 years, we haven't had a lot of great baseball movies. And the sport is not at its perch atop American culture as it once was. I think more baseball movies would really help the sport. And that's part of the reason that I wrote this book, was to try to engender some more interest in this genre that I love so much.
Yeah, you've said that you see baseball as the most cinematic of all of the professional sports, and is what you were just talking about, is that what you mean by it? The fact that there are these sort of corners to be explored, or is it more than that?
That is part of it. I do think baseball has the best personalities of any sport, and that lends itself to cinema. But there's more to it than that. I think visually it's the most cinematic sport. You know, football and basketball and hockey, they have some dimension to them, but on your TV, they mostly just go left to right and right to left. They make fantastic video games. But baseball, you know, the ball is constantly shifting directions. It comes in one way, goes out another way, gets caught by somebody, and he throws in a completely different direction. That lends itself very well to cinema. It's easy to film because of that as well, because you can kind of put together this series of shots that each stand alone, but when you put them together, they encompass a whole play. And then there's the whole underdog spirit of baseball, which lends itself well to film. And there's also something in that it's an individual sport and a team sport at the same time. I think film lends itself well to individual confrontation. And that's what baseball is built on. When I look at a pitcher and a batter kind of facing off, staring at each other, I think of Clint Eastwood and Lee Van Cleef. You know, I think of great Westerns. I think of great duels in cinematic history, you know, and they wear hats and baseball players wear hats and you can see their faces like you can't always in some of the other sports. So when you add all this stuff together, I mean, it's not a surprise to me that there have been more baseball movies made than there have for any other sport.
Talking with Noah Gittell, the author of Baseball, the movie. You organized this book, I think, in a really interesting way, because it's kind of like how does one get their hands around the idea of like baseball in cinema through the decades? And you sort of organized this, you sort of put these into these themes through the decades. And I kind of want to tick through some of them. You begin with baseball film and building the American dream is kind of your first category. And in that you have films like Pride of the Yankees, the Jackie Robinson story, Damn Yankees, the Babe Ruth story, but also a film which I think is not as widely remembered, The Stratton Story. Let's hear a little bit from The Stratton Story, which stars Jimmy Stewart as Monty Stratton and June Allison as his wife.
For the Southern All-Stars, Milliken catching, and in his first comeback appearance, Monty Stratton pitching.
Why didn't you tell me about it, Monty?
Well, I wanted to surprise you. I got so I was throwing the ball pretty good and I was all steamed up but now I'm afraid.
Afraid? Afraid of what? You've been beaten before.
No, this is different. I keep saying to myself that I'm just the same as everybody else, but I wanted to prove it. I wanted to show you.
You don't have to prove anything to me, darling.
Well, maybe I don't have to, but I wanted to.
Of course, the big drama here is the fact that he had been a successful pitcher and then injures his leg in a hunting accident and it has to be removed. And so now he comes back with a leg and a prosthetic.
Yeah, it's a really good film. I mean, pretty much every Jimmy Stewart movie is a good movie.
Agreed.
But
you're allowed to keep talking. Go ahead.
But, you know, and he makes for a great baseball player. In fact, he played one again in a movie called Strategic Air Command, a baseball player who joins the Navy, I think it was. But this movie is really interesting to me because it pairs so nicely with The Pride of the Yankees. The idea that I put forth in the book is that The Pride of the Yankees is really a World War II movie. This is a movie about a young man who is cut down in the prime of his life, has to learn how to die with dignity, and about his family who have to watch this and sort of process it and support him. The film was made on the eve of U.S.'s entrance into World War II, and some of the voiceover that opens the film, which was written by the great sports writer Damon Runyon, alludes to this idea that the film is a metaphor for fallen American soldiers. Stratton's Story is also that, in a way. I think that this is a film that speaks to those soldiers who returned home from World War II and were struggling. In this film, it's amputation, which was a common affliction of people who fought in the war. But it could be any post-traumatic stress disorder or any other injury that these folks came home with. And Jimmy Stewart plays it really well. He, of course, did suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder from having fought in the war. And there are these scenes in the movie of him really suffering depression and a real bitterness at his predicament, at having lost this thing that he loved, the game of baseball, because he had his leg amputated. And he brings a lot of reality to that performance. It's really kind of intense. So these are two movies that pair together really well. And as a whole, they make the argument, along with the other films that were made in this time, that baseball is this fundamentally American thing, that it is a thing that can help cure us of our ailments, that can be this constant in our lives and help us work through our problems. So that's why I say that it sort of helped build the American dream, because in these films, you have it all. You have a beautiful wife, you have a great job that you love, and you have this sport that can help us get over our problems. And these are the two most prominent films, but I would throw in The Winning Team with Ronald Reagan as Grover Cleveland Alexander as another one. And even the Jackie Robinson story. I mean, he's overcoming racism in that, but it follows the same template as the rest of these films.
Of course, the idea of the American dream through the 70s comes under pressure, most notably around the Watergate scandal, distrust of government. It's also a great time for American cinema in the 70s, a lot of paranoia and things like that in films broadly. But you sort of organize a few baseball films as reflective of this as well.
Yeah, Bang the Drum Slowly is the first baseball movie of the 70s. And in fact, it was the first baseball movie made in, I want to say, 12 years since Safe at Home in 1962. And that also is a good comparison to The Pride of the Yankees. I keep bringing up The Pride of the Yankees because it really is the first baseball movie that really landed with the American public in a big way. And The Bang the Drum Slowly is also about a New York baseball player who gets stricken with a deadly disease. The difference is that Bang the Drum Slowly is not rousing, and there's no dignified death that they're searching for here. In fact, it opens with him already having been diagnosed. So there's no sort of rise and fall of this player. It's just sort of long, slow fall. And the idea of the movie is that he's a backup catcher played by Robert De Niro, who's not very good and is probably about to get cut. But the star pitcher and his roommate, who's the only one who knows of his illness, sticks his neck out for him and puts into his contract that he can't get sent down, or they'll have to send the star pitcher down as well. So it's this long season in which the star pitcher tries to help this catcher hit a little better and tries to get the guys around him to be a little nicer to him because he's sort of the rube of the team and the guy that everyone makes fun of. And its goals and its aims are very modest. And that's what makes it a 70s movie to me. It doesn't have any illusions about the game and about who these people are. They're not all great guys. They're guys who are trying their best. And that's what a lot of 70s movies were like.
And of course, also in this era is the Bad News Bears, which in some ways is the flip side of that, but also kind of chimes with that.
I think it does. We have, the kids in that movie are famous for behaving badly, right? I mean, that's the name of the movie. That's what people remember about it. Guys shoving chocolate bars into their mouths, guys pushing each other around, hurling racial slurs at each other, getting hit in the nuts with baseballs. But when I watch that movie, I'm most fascinated by the adults. Morris Buttermaker, played by Walter Matthau, is not a great guy at the start of the movie. He exploits children. He drinks all day long. He's just not somebody you would want your kids to ever hang around, which is a pretty big change from how managers were portrayed in baseball movies in the past. But the other adults are even worse. I mean, you have the guy who put the team together. He's a politician and he claims to care about the kids, but all he wants to do is win and not embarrass himself. He's the first one to suggest they disband the team when they play so poorly. And you've got some of the other parents, like the opposing coach, who slaps his kid around on the field. And to make a movie like this in the 70s, a kids movie in which the parents behave so badly was a really subversive thing. When you're a kid, your parents are the establishment. They're the government, they're everything. So this is a really anti-establishment film that dares to say not only are the kids not all right, the parents are not so all right either.
Yeah. Then we enter what you were talking about, that era when you kind of came to consciousness about the movies, where we have tons of baseball movies coming out, everything from The Natural to Field of Dreams, 8 Men Out, Bull Durham, A League of Their Own. These range from comedies that are fairly light to comedies that are kind of heavy to very sort of, longingly looking at the game with this beautiful nostalgia. What's happening through that era?
There's a tension in that era, I think is the best way to put it, between those films that just want to revel in their nostalgia. And those films coincide very well with what, Ronald Reagan was pushing at the time in his famous Morning America ad and his whole rhetoric at the time, which was essentially a make America great again sort of rhetoric, that things were better in the 50s before the counterculture and that we can get back to that. And films like The Natural and The Sandlot, and to some degree, Field of Dreams, speak to that as well. Those are very nostalgic films. Those are films that, to some degree, are wrestling with the past, but I think mostly are just happy to revel in the past for a while. But then you have films like Eight Men Out, which I think perfectly walks that line between giving us the nostalgia we want and questioning the nostalgia and thinking were things better in the past. That's a great film about the 1919 Chicago Black Sox, the gambling scandal that rocked the industry and really led to a lot of changes in baseball that stuck around. But the case that it makes is that we're all corrupt. Everybody in that movie is corrupt, from the kids selling papers on the street to the new commissioner of the game that they install after the scandal. So that's a really thoughtful movie, a movie that interrogates what was going on at the time. And I think Bull Durham does that in a way as well, because, you know, there's some great nostalgic stuff in that movie. There's some great baseball movie montages, but it also wrestles with the real darkness of the game. It wrestles with the business side of the game and how dehumanizing that is for people. And it also shows ball players as they really are, that they curse and they womanize and they're funny, but they're not all great guys all the time. And that has a real feeling of authenticity to it. And in that way, it sort of feels more like a 70s movie than an 80s.
You've said that, you know, and I think we all know this, that, you know, baseball movies have not arrived at the clip that they once did. And in a lot of these films, even in these different eras, one of the things you're talking about is this sense of nostalgia, this looking back that kind of comes with a lot of baseball films. But when I think of, you know, in recent years, and I say recent sort of in a broad sense, probably the most popular baseball movie is one that's very forward-looking, one that is very much looking at baseball as innovative in certain ways, and that's Moneyball.
Yeah, it's funny you say recent because, right, it was like 13 years ago now,
Totally.
but there have been so few. It feels recent. Moneyball is an interesting case because it is about innovation. And it speaks to an innovation that was occurring not just in baseball, but that was occurring in government, in corporate culture, everywhere else in the world, essentially, this data revolution. And in some ways, it is very new. That movie does new and interesting things with the baseball genre. It focuses on a front office guy. It marginalizes the players. It demonizes the scouts. I mean, those are all big changes. On the other hand, it is in some ways exactly the same as every other great baseball movie we've ever known and loved, which is that it's about a team of misfits and out. But they finally learn to buy into the team attitude. They come together, they go on a winning streak, they get close to their final goal and ultimately fall short. And that's pretty much every baseball movie that I've ever loved. So I think what makes Moneyball so successful is this idea that it layers these new and innovative conventions on top of a really tried and true baseball movie narrative.
You know, that kind of brings us to today. As you've said, you think maybe more baseball movies would be good for baseball. I also just wonder if it would be good for the movies. I mean, I think one of the things that strikes me right now is, you know, these two titans of American culture are both in some ways struggling right now. They're in a fight for their lives. I mean, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but in some ways they are. There's a lot of talk about, you know, are the movies going to be gone in the way we knew them? And, you know, baseball seems to be struggling to find new audiences. Can they help each other, or are you sort of chronicling the end of an era that is about to be behind us?
No, I think they can help each other, but I think they both have to evolve, and the baseball movie has to evolve as well. I mean, there are reasons baseball movies haven't been made much in the last decade. International box office has been really important to the calculus that gets a film made, especially over the last 10 or 20 years. And baseball movies have performed very badly overseas. They've also been reliant on stars, and Hollywood doesn't really know how to make movie stars in the way that they used to. So I think the future of baseball and the baseball movie is international. You know, baseball is trying to internationalize itself. That's why they hold the World Baseball Classic. That's why they hold games in Mexico City and in London every year. And the baseball movie needs that as well, because that's the only way these movies will get made in the future. And it more reflects what the sport actually is becoming an international sport. So maybe instead of the baseball movie being a symbol of America in the future, the baseball movie will become a symbol of something more global, and we'll have a movie set at the World Baseball Classic or some other kind of more international baseball film. It's the future of the industry. It's the future of baseball. So why wouldn't it be the future of the baseball movie as well?
50. That was Noah Gittell. He's a film critic, sports writer, and author of Baseball the Movie. That conversation originally aired on The Culture Show. And speaking of The Culture Show...
I've heard of that show.
Yeah. What do you know about that show, Jared Bowen?
I'm not going to walk into that because anything I say will sound egotistical, I think.
Yeah, I have set this... You are in my trap. No, but what is on the show today on The Culture Show?
We have another exciting day. It's really exciting when it starts with Renée Fleming and Thomas Hampson.
Not bad.
So 2 major opera stars there in town right now because they are performing selections from John Adams' opera Nixon in China, which if you're not familiar with it, of course, it's about Nixon in China, but this duality of the public-facing lives and the interior lives of the Chinese figures, of Richard and Pat Nixon. So we talked to them all about their process in working their way into this piece. And then the new film, André Is an Idiot. I don't know if you've heard about this.
Yes.
It's a pretty extraordinary story. It's a sad story, but the film isn't. This is about André, who was a former ad man who turned down the opportunity to go get a colonoscopy with his best friend. If he had, it probably would have saved his life because about 18 months later, he was diagnosed with colorectal cancer. But being a zany guy and an outrageous guy, he wanted to make a documentary film about his last years and how he lived that life. And it's a really extraordinary film. Don't take my word for it. It won the audience prize at Sundance.
Yeah.
So we'll speak with that director. And then we end with our furry friends in the exhibition of presidential pets at the JFK Library.
Beautiful. That is The Culture Show coming your way in about a minute and a half. So don't go anywhere. As for us, that's about it. Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is the webbing in our baseball mitt. Special thanks to everybody else who made the show happen today. We will be right back in 23 short hours. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Boston Ski and Tennis, helping families stay active and outdoors this spring, offering a wide range of tennis and pickleball products and services, with locations in Newton and Westboro or online at bostonskiandtennis.com.
Get a rare behind-the-scenes look of the Graham Company through the dancers who embody her work in a 2-part documentary. Don't miss Martha Graham Dance Company, We Are Our Time, tomorrow at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, what happens when a Cold War diplomatic détente becomes opera? In Nixon in China, composer John Adams transformed one of the most staged political encounters of the 20th century into a landmark American work. Opera stars Renée Fleming and Thomas Hampson join us to talk about presenting the piece with the Boston Symphony Orchestra and the experience of diving into the minds of Richard and Pat Nixon. Then André Is an Idiot. That's a declaration and documentary film addressing an ill-fated decision by one-time ad man André Ricciardi to forego a colonoscopy. A year later, he was diagnosed with terminal stage 4 colorectal cancer. The film is funny, profane, and devastating, and turns one terrible mistake into something painful, candid, and unexpectedly uplifting. André's friend, director Tony Benna, is here to talk about the film. And a furry look at American history by way of the animal occupants of the White House. An exhibition at the JFK Library and Museum features the dogs, cats, raccoons, and other creatures who were beloved by America's presidents. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. In February 1972, President Richard Nixon arrived in China for a visit that reshaped Cold War diplomacy between our nations and became one of the most closely watched political spectacles of the 20th century. 15 years later, composer John Adams transformed that moment into Nixon in China, a groundbreaking opera that explored not just the history and pageantry in the story, but also the vanity, anxiety, and the private selves parading behind public power. This week, two of opera's biggest stars, Renée Fleming and Thomas Hampson, join the Boston Symphony Orchestra to perform selections from the work. Fleming performs as First Lady Pat Nixon, and Hampson takes on Richard Nixon. They reprise roles they've performed together in a 2023 Paris Opera production. They now bring them to Symphony Hall for performances tonight through Saturday. We sat down with them yesterday at Symphony Hall right after their rehearsal. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
It's great to be here.
Well, to talk about Nixon and China, Renée, I'll start with you and how you encapsulate really how we see this story now, how we've lived with this piece.
Well, it's interesting because I hadn't seen the opera before. I've seen many other pieces of his, and absolutely I'm a huge fan of John Adams. There was a period of time when I was begging him to let me sing something or write something for me, and I think he was just, nervous about big opera singers. And so we just never worked together until 23 when we did the premiere. But it's been fascinating for me to play a real person that you can see footage of, that you can read about, she had a very public life. And it's a lot more fun. There's more to copy. There's more to kind of think about in terms of the interpretation.
Does she become, how do you see her as a character, but also as a real person?
Well, as a character in the opera, I mean, a lot of the writing for her is as his wife. So she is responding to him the whole third act. She's reacting to what he says, and they're a married couple. And but the act 2 is really her act, so that's more interesting. She gets to interact because she's the public-facing person on this tour. She interacts with the public. She is. We see it almost as we saw it through the eyes of the television camera, which was how it was all television and, of course, press. An interesting woman, very strong, had a tough childhood. Her mother died. She ended up raising her siblings, and was fortunate to meet Richard Nixon. She wasn't really particularly interested in him at the time. He was persistent, and until Watergate, it all worked out very well for them.
Well, yes. Where does he come into this? How do you look at this piece and that relationship?
Well, I don't want to. What I want to say first is that this isn't a bio of Nixon or the family. It's not even a bio of Mao. It's quite a philosophical, political opera, in my opinion. Historical narrative. How does politics become mythologized? Who commands the narrative that becomes the legacy and the historical fact? And this was a big driving paranoia of Richard Nixon and his whole politic. This whole opera is pre-Watergate. So everything that we probably cliche-wise think of Nixon, either growling or pointing fingers. Another objective event that was certainly the zenith of his and Kissinger's world politic, as it were. What you get, and what I think John and Alice do brilliantly, is capture that sort of declaiming, dominating personality of Nixon. Nixon was very smart. He thought before he spoke, but when he spoke, it was what he decided that everybody should know. and I think that's very much how he operates in the opera. I think they've captured that personality trait very, very well.
News. Has a kind of mystery. Has a kind of mystery.
Well, what becomes fascinating in the opera, too, is the public-facing person and the interior personality that we largely weren't privy to then, and not to that much degree now, to truly understand who these figures may have been.
And they weren't either. They weren't privy to their thoughts or experiences. So she said, Alice said that these were parts of her that she put together and wrote, or parts of people that she knew. So it was really fabricated. And especially as you get into his kind of meltdowns and the third act, it's interesting to know that it becomes something that much more creative.
I think you hit a very valid point, and that is that whatever the structure of the opera is and the power of the message, political legacy, publicness, this event was televised, first major event, as you said earlier, Renee, ever televised in international. He's very proud of that. It's the time of the Apollo flight, which he doesn't hesitate to remind everybody that the Americans did it first, and, it's the human dream, all of that. But then the third act, you have this, as you said, meltdown of what is the distillation of normal people. Mao and Mrs. Mao become a romantic couple, remembering what they were like 35 years ago. And the same thing with Nixon. And his formulating time of his life was as an officer in World War II, damn near captured by the Japanese, having Pat as his love. I almost said goodbye to you, Pat, he says in the third act. And the punchline in so many ways of this whole context of how we handle these political narratives, as it were, comes from Chou En-lai at the very end of the opera. And he says, at the end, have we done good? I just, that should be just hanging on a plaque someplace. Yeah. It should be the great rhetorical question of all politicians in every age.
And Renee, you have this aria continuing on that thread where Pat Nixon is envisioning utopia or conjuring these notions, which one might not assign to either of the Nixons.
And let this union remain. She has a very positive feeling about China and the U.S., and she feels strongly, and because, again, she's the one visiting with the population, that something really good could come from this. And I love, my favorite thing in the opera is that Richard Nixon's, your final few lines are about flipping burgers, and having these memories from actually being in combat and really working with other young men. And it's not unlike how real people sentimentalize their lives.
If you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with soprano Renée Fleming and baritone Thomas Hampson about John Adams' opera Nixon in China, performed with the Boston Symphony Orchestra this weekend at Symphony Hall. Well, speaking of real people, what did this opera begin to do within the arts for us having this urgency about contemporary times and this immediate look back on history? Because this was really almost unprecedented what John Adams started to generate with Nixon in China and having this relatively immediate look at history.
Well, I know that my first experience with Peter Sellers was were the operas, the Mozart operas, the Da Ponte trio that he set in the 80s in New York. I was a student at Juilliard, and I was completely blown away by seeing people in Hawaiian shirts in a diner sing these masterpiece Mozart operas. So I know that changed my imagination, my thinking about what opera could be. And when you add this, which was just a few years later, because Peter Sellers was obviously very instrumental in the creation of this piece, as he always was, you really start to think anything's possible, in terms of storytelling. Was that like that for you? Well, you were in Europe, so you were ahead in terms of seeing unusual productions.
Yeah, I found, and I remember the premiere going by, and no more than that. I wasn't involved in it in any way, but as the piece even settled in the first 10 years of his life, there was always this conversation about CNN opera, and can you take contemporary events and turn them into an operatic moment, and is it worthwhile? And somehow the implied question is that really a valid part of the American culture? But at the same time, the jealous passion for opera that we have in this country and production. We have no problem talking about Risorgimento with Verdi. We have no problem talking about the turn of the century with Puccini. And we certainly have no problem, as you've brought up Da Ponte and Mozart, contextualizing where those pieces came from. Nor should we ever forget that Beaumarchais, who birthed all of these pieces, spent an aggregate 11 years of his life in prison for treasonous writing. So I think that we need to open a bigger discussion with our public that opera does come from life. It comes from every slice of history that we have it. It's not invented out of something. So, yes, maybe we have to travel a little more distance to imagine what somebody named Belmonte thought or where he ate, but it's still real people. And I think that the longer this piece lives, and I think it's going to live a very long time, it is played, it's entering into that iconic phase of enlightenment and enlightened figures and personalities and politics and so forth. I think it's very exciting to see that happen.
So one other interesting thing is that if you're an academic, you can find material and interviews of them early on after the piece premiered, and it wasn't really known at the time what had happened in China because so many people died. Maybe 30 million people starved to death, and it was a really brutal period for them because he had forced the Chinese to give away their tools, everything they owned, their farms, and this is actually in the opera. This is talked about, how horrible that was. So, but they said that they didn't quite, when they were writing the opera, quite get it, and people were extremely negative about Nixon in general and Kissinger, his whole career, pretty much. Although he was very popular at the time. He was more popular than Nixon by far at that time. And everybody said, that's not Kissinger. It doesn't look like him in the production we did. I said, yes, it does. Look at the photos from that period. Yeah. He was young and slim. And
I remember I was studying political science in school. And the big lament was, too bad Kissinger wasn't born in America. He could become president. Enormously powerful. And by the way, Pat wasn't all that crazy about Henry.
Well, I said to my, my friend who really worked closely with him, I said, did she talk to Kissinger? Never.
Yeah.
They never.
She was also
interacted.
quite suspect of the at the end of the day, the power he had over Richard Nixon. I mean, they were really quite a duo. This whole Mao and Chinese and the Cultural Revolution, thank you, I'm glad you brought that up, because it was a very, very brutal affair. And but we all lived through the hippie era, and there was a great deal of glorification of the Cultural Revolution, a lot of people with their beautiful red stars on their hats and all that stuff, and that's terrific. But, I think one can actually say in all of enormous politics, there is an underbelly of abuse. And I think that comes out substantially in this opera. I think we get that people become these iconic representatives like Mao and Nixon of these huge ideologies. But at the end of the day, in the third act, they're talking about flipping burgers. And they're talking about dancing, and where dancing wasn't allowed, but because he was Mao and Mrs. Mao, they were allowed. It's a wonderful expose.
Is it a stretch to say that this opera changed what would come after in terms of addressing politics, in terms of addressing things that society hasn't been talking about but should have all along?
Well, I think John Adams and Peter Sellers did that in every piece they wrote. So, Klinghoffer came after this, but we all loved the Oppenheimer piece. That's a gorgeous opera and powerful. So I think they they always tried to really address topical subjects and
that's
difficult
Peter
subjects.
Sellers. Peter Sellers is right behind, in lockstep with and brother of John Adams.
What is it to live in this music?
I'm crazy about it. I absolutely love this piece, and it gives me huge joy to hear the percussion. The huge scene at the end of Act 1 is so gorgeous and so completely unlike anything else in the repertoire. I
can't imagine, and our public will hear this, I can't imagine what the first reaction was to this, 13-point harmony, arrhythmic, cheers, 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 cheers. It is so exciting. And, quite challenging to memorize. But it's very exciting. The score is, I agree with you 100%, Renee. It's gorgeous and fulfilling.
I had to say today, I said, there's one entrance in there that I was getting from watching the back of the baritone singing Show and Lie. Since he's not here today, you're going to have to cue me because otherwise I can't come in. So I literally watched him take a breath and I went, oh, that's me.
What does it mean to be in something like that that's got you on edge, that's challenging you that way?
Well, when you're first doing it, it's,
That's what we do.
I think it's always going to be hard, honestly. I think if you don't keep it going, this piece would have to be revisited every time.
No, I always told you, especially my opening aria, which is really, really tricky. And, the conductor, there's only so much they can do. No houses have prompters anymore, which is fine. But, they've got their hands full, and if something goes wrong with the orchestra, you really have to know exactly where you are. But, you just never underestimate what you're up against. But look, opera is like that. Also very lyrical, elegiac pieces. They require tremendous concentration. It's a musical language that exposes the soul of the character. It's not just the words. It's this whole inhabiting of the environment, musical and stage environment that we're in as opera singers. That's what we do for a living. That's what we love. It's passionate.
Your wallet poker. I sure did. System. 5-card stud taught me a lot about mankind.
You have done this together before. What comes in that process? You have done it. You have other dates on the calendar to come together again?
Yes, we're doing this a lot in the next year. This piece is very current, I would
say. But over the last 30 years, we've had various relationships on stage.
Yes. Not many, but not often. So
that's true.
Once a decade or so, we would appear together.
Well, I just have to, for my last question, that I have to follow up on what you just said. It's so important, so relevant right now. How is it important for audiences to experience this and for us to revisit this piece in this time?
It's interesting. I think it's always good. History is great. It's a great teacher. And I've been really interested in reading. It's fiction, but heavily researched historical novels. And just to try and kind of look back in the past and see when have we had difficult periods, how has mankind really solved problems in the past, and what are we facing now that makes this even more challenging than ever before?
I agree completely. Those are the tools of everyone's imagination. I want to do a shout out for everybody about opera. Opera is the great laboratory of human passion and human behavior in whatever historical context it may come from. It's all, and you can find anyone watching or listening to an opera is going to find some part of that story is in sync with their story as a human being. And it's an island of sanity in a world that just doesn't stop. And I don't mean that just in today's world. I just mean in general. We go to the theater to regenerate, to enliven our imagination and perhaps imagine a better place where we as human beings can live, not just ourselves, but with one another. I think it's that big and that exciting.
I'm loath to bring up Timothée Chalamet, but you must see the revelation that people have after the experience of seeing your pieces, especially one like this. And I'm sure you have encounters with the audience after and understand the impact, despite what people might say about the death of the classical arts.
I think it gave us a nice little punch in the arm, and kind of people rallied around the performing arts. I went, yeah, thank you, Timothy. That was a gift. It was an offhand remark. If you watch the interview, it was just, I'm sorry, but he's not wrong. We are facing tremendous challenges for the classical arts all across the country, and opera isn't the most expensive of all of them because of the number of people involved in putting it together, and people are distracted now, and people also don't necessarily want to sit through long things. So there are real serious challenges.
But I don't think his point, if I may disagree with you, which I very seldom do, and I don't really disagree. I agree with you. His comment was certainly offhanded. It just wasn't well thought out. I don't think he's right because he was making a judgment on the art form and the application of it, the interest and the general interest level of it. And I think whatever strain we're in, that give it to kids, give it to people who want to understand something, give people an on-ramp, and they love the performing arts and they cherish the performing arts. What Timothy was going off about is just somehow indicative of a shallow place that he lives in his own life. He just hasn't entered into that conversation or experience of the performing arts, which probably his whole life has been nothing but camera and artificial work.
No. His mother's a dance teacher. He grew up in dance.
His grandmother.
That's right.
Yeah, he really grew up in dance.
I'm trying to be nice to him. I found it a ridiculous comment, but I don't want to make it ridiculous. I'm more concentrated in having conversation with people about what is so passionate and exciting and relevant, necessary, useful, all of those things in the performing arts. And I don't think that is a rhetorical question.
Well, I agree with both of you, especially the fact that it is igniting us to talk about this and in such beautiful terms.
And rally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you. Super job.
Renée Fleming is the acclaimed soprano performing the part of First Lady Pat Nixon in selections from John Adams' Nixon in China. Thomas Hampson is the celebrated baritone performing Richard Nixon. They appear with the Boston Symphony Orchestra at Symphony Hall tonight through Saturday. To learn more, check out the BSO's website. And again, we thank them both for taking time out of their rehearsal schedule. Coming up, few movies about cancer are this funny, this blunt, or this alive. Film director Tony Benna joins us to discuss his Sundance hit, André Is an Idiot. He's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
When you get ready with GBH's Morning Edition, you start the day informed.
All eyes are on the Supreme Court today.
Ready for all the elements.
We have mostly sunny skies for today, a little breezy as well.
And relaxed, because you're covered on the issues that matter most.
The latest headline news concerning the CDC.
Get ready with us. GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hers. Weekdays starting at 6 on GBH 89.7. And streaming on the GBH News app.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Rockland Trust Bank, helping foster healthy relationships with money by providing education and resources to the community, one neighborhood at a time. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing helpful digital tools, world-class providers, and coverage that help you live in the moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
And the Boston Speaker Series announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, including Pete Buttigieg, former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, and former U.S. Ambassador to China Nicholas Burns. BostonSpeakers.org.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show on 89.7 and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. One-time San Francisco ad man André Ricciardi had the chance and invitation to have a colonoscopy along with his best friend. He declined and 1 year later was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. It was terminal. André is an idiot. That's the name of the documentary he wanted to document his final 3 years after the diagnosis. It also serves as a cautionary public service announcement.
When I told my mother that I had colon cancer, the first thing she said was, "What a idiot." She said, "That is the easiest cancer to stop. All you need to do is get a colonoscopy, and I may still defeat it, but if I don't, she's right. I'm a idiot."
Directed by his friend Tony Benna, the documentary follows André through treatment and delivers us into the circle around him, his wife, his daughters, and his closest friends. We also find how he wanted to clone a Kardashian, how his penchant for drugs and alcohol kind of prepared him for chemo, and how Tommy Chong is a pretty good stand-in for André's dad. The film is all parts blunt and poignant, and hilarious and life-affirming, so much so that it won the Audience Award at Sundance. André Is an Idiot is screening now at the Coolidge Corner Theater and opens at Alamo Drafthouse Boston Seaport today. Tony Benna joins me to talk about it all. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I will say that when I first learned about this film, and I think anybody listening who hasn't heard about it yet, probably it takes a moment to digest this concept, this contrast of the circumstances and the tone and the humor with which he approached these final years of his life. How did you come into this, especially as his friend?
Yeah, I mean, I had directed a lot of André's ad work, previously, and I was always crazy ideas, ideas that you might break a bone or get arrested. But they're always fun, and I hadn't spoken with André in probably 5 years when he called, or he emailed me and said, I've got a really fun project for you. Let's get on a Zoom. And I jump on a Zoom with him. And the first thing he says is, I've got stage 4 colon cancer and I want to make a comedy. And I was just like, what? And so just like you're saying, they're figuring out how to ride that line of tragedy and comedy was the first thing that came into my mind of like, this might be tough.
Well, what was it? First, how do you describe his personality that this would be the default when he received such grim news?
I mean, it's so André to try to create art out of something horrible, but also it's so André to use humor to get through something like this. And I like to say, there's that cheesy kind of line of, laughter is the best medicine. I think André, in this case, it wasn't just the best medicine for him, but it was the best medicine for all of us, the crew, the friends, the family. And, his humor is contagious. And I think you'll find that in the film.
Take me through how you worked with him to do this, because I was also struck in watching it. I mean, it's such an incredible film, but knowing about production myself, that you have an idea at the beginning. And you probably, and anybody who's had some sort of terminal illness or grave illness has a concept of it at the beginning that, of course, changes by the end. So what was it for you to organically go through this process?
I mean, I think with any documentary, the story sort of writes itself, right, as during the process. So patience was key. In the beginning, André was really keen on kind of poking holes in, cancer cures that were fake and that kind of thing, which I thought was funny and clever, but I also felt like there was a deeper story. And then, like I said, documentary unfolds as you're shooting it. And so the story you see on screen is really the experience that I think we all had being around André for those last 3.5 years.
One of the most poignant moments, if my timeline is correct, is before you all came on board. And that's where we see in the film how he receives the call from his doctor telling him the diagnosis and how he reacts. How did that unfold?
Well, that call that you hear in the film is actually the real call. So that audio is the actual audio that André, his GI doctor, that was the results he got from his colonoscopy. He said to me, he's like, I don't know why I recorded that call. I just figured it was going to be life-changing, and it was. And about a week later is when he reached out, to Lee and I and said, let's make something out of this. I don't know how this is going to end, but let's make some art. And just to give you a little context, Lee and André and I had talked for years about making one great art project outside of advertising. And unfortunately, it took André getting cancer for us to rally. But I still believe that we succeeded in creating that piece of art together.
Well, to explain for our audience, of course, they will see it in your film. But what were the circumstances that led to this horrific irony that if he had just done the friend thing, this may not have happened?
Yeah, I mean, colon cancer is one of the easiest cancers to prevent. If you get checked, it's really curable early on. Lee, André's best friend, had jokingly said, let's get a couples colonoscopy. Well, not even jokingly, but had asked André to go with him to get a couples colonoscopy in San Francisco. André declined. Lee went. Lee, got a clean bill of health. André didn't go for another, 18 months. And by that point, 2 years maybe, by that point he had stage 4. I've spoke to the oncologist since then, and they said, if André would have gone with Lee, he still would have had cancer, but we could have cured it at that point. It would not have been stage 4 that had metastasized. So really he was in that fine, window of time where everything changed within 2 years.
Did he, I don't know how to ask this, but how much of what we see is entirely him? In other words, did you leave some of his more fraught moments or grief-stricken moments on the editing room floor? Because for most of what we see in the documentary, this is a man who really keeps his humor and spirits intact.
Yeah, no, André, what you see in the film is what I experienced. I kept waiting for André to break down, and maybe cry or become, a bit more emotional about his situation, but he never did. He literally was joking to the day that he passed. The only things I kind of maybe cut around were maybe some of the family being more emotional. But I think we have just enough in there to get the point across, make it a human story and, something relatable. I felt like, I kind of like to joke that this is really a story about André. He just happened to have cancer while we were filming it. I think it would have turned out the same way, even if he didn't have cancer. It's a character piece, but we get to meet him and his family along the way. And it's really a love letter to life.
I'm speaking with Tony Benna, the director of the documentary André Is an Idiot, which is playing at the Coolidge Corner Theater and opens at the Alamo Drafthouse in the Seaport today. Well, speaking of family, this is also really interesting. Of course, his daughters are the product of him. His wife has a really interesting story. I don't want to give too much away about how they came together in this very unusual match that turned into a love story for ages, it would seem. But what was it to also have to look at his dying essentially through their eyes?
I mean, the hardest part for me was, interviewing with the girls. I have a daughter myself who just turned 10, and I'd met André's daughters when they were, younger, 5 and 7 or something like that. But, those interviews were tough, but I just kept the interviews very human and I didn't get into the nitty gritty of things because that wasn't my job. I felt like what we were doing was we were all kind of going through therapy together in a way where these questions and answers and these interview sessions helped all of us, in a way that I hadn't expected, but they were less interviews in the end and more of just us hanging out, talking about what's going on. And it was very cathartic for me and the crew. And I believe it was cathartic for the entire family. So
one of your really enjoyable devices in the film, I have to say, is some of the moments that we might not want to watch real people do, you create with stop motion animation. Tell me about how you incorporated that, such an old school method, as you were addressing some of the tougher elements of the film.
Yeah, well, I went to school at San Francisco State, and I studied stop motion animation with puppets. And so André and I had done a couple of projects, kind of Robot Chicken style. We're not, not refined stop motion. But for me, when we got in the middle of the film and we were starting to think about animation, and what you're saying is correct, there was no way to show some of these stories with a real human being. With a puppet, it made those stories digestible, humorous, and cute. I also love the fact that the puppet and stop motion animation has these flaws to it. It's like every frame is flawed. Nothing's perfect. And André is giving us that vulnerability. And so it's a really great reflection of the rough edges around our main character. So I think stop motion was just the perfect medium. André would never be seen with like a 3D glossy animation. It was like stop motion was the only answer in my mind.
I was also quite struck by, again, in keeping with the incongruous nature of this, he was fascinated by dying and he was surprised by dying. He even talks about it as being boring or mundane.
Yeah, André is one of those people that, he gets a news like stage 4 colon cancer, and the first thing he does is research, read, dive into these different cures. Not that he believed in it. He believes a lot in science, of course, but he's very curious. And so I think the more information André had, the better. And we kind of follow him on this crazy journey of what does a man like André want to look into and what might potentially be the last 3-4 years of his life.
What has this been like for you since it's come out into the world? I imagine the first big debut it had was at Sundance, where, as I mentioned, it won the Audience Award for documentaries. Did it take you by surprise how much people were taken by this film?
100%. It took me by surprise that we got accepted to the festival in the first place. And then it really took me by surprise to hear the laughter in the audience, the uproarious laughter throughout that first premiere. That was the moment that I realized we weren't crazy, and that Andre was resonating with audiences. The humor's there.
Well, let me stop you. Did you think you were crazy? Did you challenge yourself, thinking, "What are people just going to think we're so tasteless in making this film?"
I mean, there's always that, in the back of your head is this it's just a joke that we think is funny, or these things that we think are these jokes that we're thinking are funny internally, but is the audience in the world going to react the same way? And they have. And, I think that what I've learned along the way is that what we did is we entertain first through Andre's personality, but we impact second. And I think that's a really great formula for documentary.
What has been the impact as it's gone out into the world? I love that you have the moment with André as conjuring Katie Couric, very famously getting her colonoscopy on the Today Show after losing her husband to the disease. And so you're the modern day Katie Courics.
Yeah, and Katie Couric has been supporting our film. She recently posted the trailer, which is amazing. But the response has been incredible. I mean, I didn't realize how many lives this could save when we were making it. I figured we were making a piece of art with our friends, and we made it as creative as we could. We put our heart and soul into it, but the impact that it's had just since Sundance has been incredible. I mean, I've probably had 3 or 4 dozen people reach out to me and say this film saved my sister's life, or just saved one of our, someone on the film's life, or my mother's life, because they recognize symptoms. It's really funny because it's hidden in there within the jokes that Andre's saying. But like I said, entertain first, real world impact second seems to be a really great way to get a message across.
And how about you in thinking about mortality now, seeing a close friend go through it and spending so much time with it as you think about yourself?
Yeah, definitely the film has shifted my view of my own mortality, and hopefully it has the same effect on the audience. I think that after filming this for 3.5 years and working on the edit, what I realize is that idea of memento mori is very important. That idea of considering death every day will make you'll live a bigger, brighter life if you consider it every day, because no one's promised tomorrow, and we all think we have time, but we don't. And so, let's live life to its fullest.
Well, final question for you. We'll end also on a funny note, but the casting of his father. So it becomes this moment in the film where his father, his real life father, won't participate in it, doesn't want to go near a camera. How did you arrive, and who else was under consideration to play the part of Andre's father in this documentary?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So I started to unpeel the onion around Andre's life, right? So when we first started the film, it was just Andre and Lee. And then slowly, Andre allowed me to film with Janice and the girls. And then I kept bothering him about his father, and any extended family. I got his brother in the film. I just wanted to know what makes Andre tick. What makes Andre Andre. And I wanted to go all the way back to the past when Andre was a kid. His father was absolutely a no-go, and absolutely a no-go in this. And so Andre at one point just said, "Fine, let's just hire someone to play my father." And I thought that was a crazy idea. And I said, "Well, who are you thinking?" And he's like, "Well, what about Barack Obama?" And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Barack Obama might be a little young, but he's like, my second choice would be Tommy Chong." And so those were Andre's 2 choices. Tommy Chong agreed really quickly. We never did get to reach out to Barack, but I imagine he would have been into it. But yeah, Tommy Chong jumped on, and it was literally opposite Dad Day for Andre, which was amazing to witness.
Well, it's a great part of the movie, and the movie as a whole is just, it's all the things I said, and I'm so thrilled to hear the lives it's already saving, because it is definitely a wake-up call for people. Congratulations, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Tony Benna is the director of the documentary André Is an Idiot, which is screening at the Coolidge Corner Theater and opens at Alamo Drafthouse in the Seaport today. Coming up, The Tail That Wagged the White House, an exhibition at the JFK Library and Museum, explores the history of presidential pets. Who had the badger? How about the raccoon? That conversation is next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
In Yemen, a decade of war has left many people in poverty and desperate. A massive scam there has exploited that, swindling thousands of Yemenis.
Despite awareness campaigns about these fake platforms, the schemes are carefully designed to make some victims promote them by enticements.
Friends leading each other into ruin. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering private cooking events for your next team building activity, family reunion, birthday party, or night out. You can learn more at cambridgeculinary.com.
Support for GBH comes from you and Music Worcester.
A performing arts presenter founded in 1858, programming and activating cultural spaces in central Massachusetts.
Adrian Finley, Executive Director.
Music Worcester sees GBH to be this trusted news source, this trusted media outlet, bringing amazing programming to the region.
To learn more, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
The GBH News app is your daily home for essential local news. The stories you actually need to know without distractions, noise, or paywalls. Download the GBH News app today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. Macaroni the pony, Rebecca the raccoon, and Fido. These are some of the White House menagerie who are part of American history and part of a new exhibition at the JFK Library and Museum titled Presidential Pets. The furry and feathered tour of animal occupants offers a different way to learn about our nation and, in some instances, presidential pet peeves. Joining me for an overview is Alan Price, director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. Welcome back to GBH. It's great to see you again.
It's great to be with you.
So this is really fascinating because on the one hand, yes, it's adorable and it's great to see all of these animals, but it's also very insightful because we understand that this was very much by design in a lot of cases too.
Oh, absolutely. Of course it's fun and people are having a great time, but they're learning a lot about history, presidential history, the nation's history. People at all ages can access this history.
So what was the genesis of the exhibition, first of all, to give us this kind of very unique, in first of its kind at the library perspective, into presidential pets and their place in history?
It is the first of its kind with us, and I think it's the first of its kind anywhere in terms of this gathering of artifacts and documents tracing the history of pet ownership through presidential pets, going from work animals to companions to almost family members over the centuries. It's extraordinary, but we think about how do we make our history accessible? So many people learn about the nation's history through presidential history, and we often have more serious topics, like we had just finished World War II, and we like to alternate that with more family-friendly and lighthearted topics. And our supervisory curator, Janice Hodson, really thought people will resonate with pets. So many people have pets. Let's do it through the lens of presidential pets, and it has been wonderful.
Let's talk about some of the stories, starting with Fido. I didn't realize that it's most likely the case that so many dogs are named Fido. It's a name synonymous with dogs because of Abraham Lincoln.
Because of Abraham Lincoln, of course, the origins of Fido, Fidelis, loyalty. But Abraham Lincoln loved that dog. And even though it didn't really spend time at the White House, it didn't feel comfortable there. It stayed in Illinois.
But this goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, who I understand was very fond of his pet.
Yes. Jefferson is the first to live in the White House. He has a pet mockingbird named Dick. And that is the first pet to occupy the White House.
And who fed from Thomas Jefferson's own lips. I mean, it gives us a totally different perspective into these presidents. How about the farm part of what you were just talking about, and that there were all manner of animals once to be found on the White House lawn?
Oh, yes. Pauline the cow, so many sheep, and the sheep are, of course, shorn for raising money for the Red Cross during World War I. The Pauline the cow is milked. That's part of the Taft administration. Yes, working animals. Not to mention, of course, horses, stables. Horses were transportation back then. George Washington is referred to by Jefferson as the most elegant horseback rider he's ever seen. this is how people are known back then.
At what point did the pets start to become synonymous with the administrations? In other words, presidents began to recognize the value of just what you were talking about, that the majority of Americans, maybe then as they are now, were pet owners, and that this was a way into reaching people.
Absolutely. Pets make people relatable, presidents especially. Even if you are not a popular president, some people will like the dog or the cat anyway. And so there is some political currency in having a pet in many instances.
How did Teddy Roosevelt use this? So he's somebody who we know was an adventurer throughout his life. We know he loved animals. We know he loved to spend, well, this is actually not so great. He loved to spend time out west killing them too. Their adventures with bears and everything else. But he had a lot of animals, and we see one of them up close in your exhibition.
Oh, absolutely. And we are, of course, grateful to him for starting the National Park Service and the like. But we have his the menagerie of pets documented for us. And yes, there's a one-legged rooster, and yes, there are many dogs and cats and horses and ponies, like Algonquin, who is, I believe, the only pony to ride in the White House elevator. If you can imagine, that elevator is tiny, but it crammed in because one of the sons had measles, and the other two boys thought, let's take the pony up to visit him and it'll cheer him up. But yes, perhaps the strangest of that menagerie is Josiah the badger. And it's extraordinary. They played with a badger for a time.
And they're not known to be very nice creatures, so it's a curious pet.
They have an odd reputation, certainly.
Well, speaking of odd pets, what about Rebecca the raccoon that I mentioned in the intro? How did this come into being?
Yes, a raccoon was gifted to the Coolidges to be served as a meal for Thanksgiving, and Grace Coolidge thought this is a fine pet. And so Rebecca the raccoon accompanied her in so many different places, and often had a run of the grounds. And in terms of photography and making them relatable, perhaps in an odd way, they also had dogs, so I don't think people thought they were totally strange.
Well, I caught from your wall labels that the President Coolidge actually walked the raccoon around too, had collar and leash, just as though it were a dog.
Absolutely. And you wouldn't expect such a wild animal to take to domestic life, but it did fairly well. And sometimes when startled, it would nip at people, and Grace Coolidge would simply say, "Wild animal."
Well, you deal with this too, the pets who didn't quite work out, whether it be for nipping reasons or otherwise, but it has happened.
There's a long history of pets that don't adjust well to the White House. It's a stressful environment. There's a lot of chaos going on, people coming in and out. And so some are then adopted away, given to friends and family. Some are left at the family farm or family homestead, and they return to them later.
That's coded language, sending the dog out to the farm.
Indeed.
Well, speaking of in a tough environment, you recently had, I think, maybe a surprise visit from Amy Carter, of course, President Carter's daughter, and because she featured in this or at least her life is featured in the exhibition?
She is featured in the exhibition. She's very young, perhaps 9 at the start of the Carter administration, and she has a pet cat, Misty Malarkey Yin Yang. It's a long name for a small animal. And Amy was kind enough when we sent her photos showing that it had been part of her exhibit. She came up to be with us, take a look at all of the presidential pets, and she said that for a youngster in the White House, it's also stressful, and to have a pet one can confide in, relate with, play with, it's extraordinarily helpful to get through those tough years.
It was sweet to understand that. I'm speaking with Alan Price, director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. Now, this is kind of fun. You made me stop and listen to this one, but this is President Lyndon Johnson, and here he is on the 1970 album Dogs Have Always Been My Friends. Lyndon Johnson reminisces, and he's singing a duet with his beloved terrier mix, Yuki.
Come on, sing for me. Come on, sing for me.
Oh, you silly dog.
That is just great.
I do love it.
It also gives us a lens into who people are with their pets.
Yes. Some people can really let out a different side of themselves in the presence of a pet than they would with even their own children.
Well, speaking of children, this being the JFK Presidential Library and Museum, you have a fair amount around the Kennedy family, which was also filled with pets. Walk us through some of the things that people can encounter beyond the photographs.
Well, it had been some time since there were young children in the White House, and so the Kennedys come in. They have young children. Of course, they're very photogenic, but they bring a lot of pets with them, and dogs and cats and birds, and of course the ponies and the horses begin to take center stage pretty quickly, and so we have a lot of the riding gear, and most famously macaroni and the exquisite riding tack that was gifted from the King of Morocco that Caroline would ride on.
And Jackie Kennedy's jacket, because we know she was a big rider as well. We also see earlier on Teddy Roosevelt's riding crop and his saddle. For you, what is it to see these artifacts up close that are part of our National Archives?
Well, it is a treat for me always to be able to have history so close at hand, and I think so many of our visitors appreciate that. And those bygone days are not that long ago. And I think it helps people appreciate that.
Moving into more recent pets, Socks and Millie. So Socks was the Clintons' cat. Millie was the Bush's dog, who basically was the core part of a literacy campaign by Barbara Bush. So pets have come on to take almost outsized roles in recent years.
They have. Socks is incredibly photogenic, and the press corps love to follow Socks around, and the photo of Socks sitting at the podium is extraordinary. And to see a T-shirt marking that it's the second inauguration of Socks the cat, it's so much fun. And certainly Millie has a role also in a sort of visiting senior centers and making people feel comfortable. It's a bit of a therapy dog. The Bushes and Millie were terrific.
And to stay really current, the Bidens didn't have such a great track record with their pets. We read stories, this is what you were suggesting earlier, nipping going on by the German Shepherds. German Shepherds are a great breed. I grew up with them myself. I think they just had some surly ones, or maybe it was the stress you were talking about at the White House.
There were so many pets that had that issue. The Bidens weren't the first, and so perhaps they made a little bit more public use of Willow the cat.
That's right.
And the cat's paw print was on official White House invitations to events.
Well, let me shift a little bit and ask how you see the viability of the Library and Museum today.
Well, I think for most of us, we refer to ourselves as out in the field. We're a little bit far from D.C. There's so much to do in terms of continuing to process and make available the records and artifacts to the public that we're just sort of head down and making history happen. So we tend not to get caught up in the thick of the politics of it.
Well, you also are all featured, the hardworking staff of the library are featured in this exhibition of presidential pets via photographs, including your own. Tell us a little bit about the sort of the inside track that people are getting, including Amy Carter's too.
Indeed, she did submit a photo of her current cat, as did many of the staff that have pets. My own dog, Gaia, who's a half lab, half boxer, is also in that slideshow of the exhibit. It's a chance for those of us who get to work with history to feel a little bit like we're a part of the history and part of the exhibit. And I think it encourages all the visitors who come to think of their own pets, and there's an opportunity for them to draw a picture of their pets and maybe reflect upon the characteristics of their pet. And it's lovely to see how many people love their pets, from pigs to parakeets and dogs and cats in between, and talk about how wonderful or cranky they are.
Sounds great. Well, a question we love to ask luminaries such as yourself: what are you watching, reading, or listening to right now?
Oh my goodness, it's funny. My two sons, they're in their late 20s, have a whole different view on music, and I'm trying to catch up with them. So don't quiz me on what it is. But I was raised in a family that appreciated a lot of classical music, a bit of folk music, and then I had to take on the more pop stuff myself. Pop music has evolved a lot in the past 20 years, and I set a project to get a little bit up to speed on it.
It's good. Music keeps us young. I think the one thing that we have to keep on top of. Otherwise, you can fade away pretty quickly.
Exactly.
I have our team here who keeps me on top of things. Alan Price, great to see you.
So good to be with you. Thank you, Jared.
Alan Price is director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. Their exhibition, Presidential Pets, is on view through April 26th. Again, Alan Price, thank you so much for joining us. And speaking of the JFK Library, former United States Poet Laureate Billy Collins will appear there Monday night for a reading and a conversation with me about his new book of poetry, Dog Show. The event is free and it starts at 7, so come and join us. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or join us live at the Boston Public Library for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Among our topics, Miley Cyrus's joy in leaning into Hannah Montana 20 years later. How the distinctly British brand of comedy now includes Saturday Night. That plus the book released canceled after its publisher realized AI was its heavy-handed ghostwriter. Remember, no reservations required to join our live studio audience. The Culture Show crew is Max Chow-Gillette, Kate Dellis, and Chelsea Mers. Our engineer is Bill Piacciatelli. Our intern is Anna Hu. Angelica Marrero produced our YouTube live stream today. And thanks to Brian McCreath and Antonio Oliart Ross of GBH Music. If you ever miss us here on the radio, you can keep up with all things arts and culture by way of the Culture Show podcast. Just go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6:30. But first, get a global view of the news with The World.